Chapter 141. Two agents of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau found the frozen Chen Mo in the Valkyrie and confirmed his identity. They immediately contacted the headquarters and quickly arranged for the plane to transport Chen Mo back to Washington. Because Chen Mo is in the ice, for the sake of safety, they put Chen Mo into the freezer to keep the original ice state and prevent melting and accidents during transportation. However, compared with the low temperature of minus dozens of degrees in the ice layer, the temperature of minus several degrees in the freezer has been considered as warm. After leaving the cold environment, Chen Mo began to control his body's slow recovery. When he arrived in Washington, Chen Mo's body had a weak sign of life, so that Chen Mo's weak brain waves would not be doubted. As for the ability to recover slowly in the freezer, it only shows that Chen Mo's physical fitness and cell activity are very strong. As Chen Mo expected, when the medical staff of the Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau checked, it was found that Chen Mo had begun to recover, and even his brain had weak brain wave activity. No one had any doubt, but he was shocked by his strong physical quality. As soon as Chen was sitting up from his bed, the door of the room was opened gently from the outside. A beautiful female soldier in a World War II American military uniform and shirt-skirt pushed the door open and walked in. "Good morning," the female soldier said to Chen Mo with a kind smile. "Where am I?" Chen Mo turned to look at the female soldier and asked in a deep voice. "This is a recovery room in New York." The female soldier replied uneasily under Chen Mo's eyes. Although he has just been released from the freeze, Chen Mo is not weak at all. He is still powerful. His sharp eyes make people afraid. Chen Mo looks at the window beside him. The light gauze curtain of beige is gently swinging in the breeze. Through the window, you can see the windows arranged in order on another building not far away from the opposite. Outside the window, there are sounds of people and cars honking. The sound of braking is faintly heard. It seems that there is a busy street under the window. But what Chen Mo perceives is not what he sees. "Where am I?" Chen Mo stared at the female soldier and asked again. His voice became a little stern. Hearing this, the female soldier was stunned. Then she tried to be calm under Chen Mo's eyes. She smiled at Chen Mo unnaturally and shook her head slightly. "Well, I don't quite understand what you mean." The sound outside the window comes from the ground. The building opposite is just a picture hanging a few meters away, even this room. Chen Mo stood up from the bedside and strode to a wall. In the eyes of the female soldier, who was a little flustered, she punched the wall with a light fist, but it turned out to be just a layer of gypsum board. Turning around, Chen Mo slowly walked to the female soldier and asked in a deep voice, "I'll ask you again, what's this place?" Chen Mo stops in front of the female soldier and stares into her face. Looking up at Chen Mo, who was tall and powerful in front of him, she was frightened by his momentum. The female soldier was in a panic and quietly pressed the alarm in her hand. "Commander Chen Mo." As soon as the voice of the female soldiers fell, the door behind them was opened, and two soldiers in black combat suits came in quickly. Chen Mo's sharp eyes immediately turned to the two people, so that their bodies could not help but stagnate. The two soldiers who had received the alarm and rushed in stood at the door and looked at Chen Mo, but they didn't move. They all knew who the tall, cold-faced man in front of them was and heard about his achievements. His strength is said to be much stronger than that of American Captain Steve Rogers. Although he does not have any weapons at this time, don't forget that he is still the master of American Captain. Steve's fighting skills are all taught by him, and his own fighting skills are even stronger. They don't think they can beat the powerful man in front of them because of their strong physical quality and excellent fighting skills. The most important thing is that Commander Chen Mo is the idol of all of them. When he was a child, he never dreamed of wearing super cool black armor combat suit, holding sword and shield, destroying the powerful and evil Hydra army with his own power, and becoming a great hero respected by everyone. Let them fight with the heroes of World War II, the veterans of the Strategic Science Reserve Team, the most powerful soldiers of mankind, and the idols in the hearts of all people. Their pressure can be imagined. Just now, this female agent dressed as a World War II female soldier was totally in a mess, shocked by Chen's great momentum. She didn't think much about it at all. She almost instinctively pressed the alarm in her hand. At this time, when she saw the soldiers stuck there, she reacted. The man in front of her was not their enemy. However, the arrival of several soldiers finally liberated her from Chen Moqiang's powerful oppression. After calming her mood, the female agent looked at Chen Moqiang sincerely. "Sir, we have no malice." Seeing that Chen Mo didn't take any further action, everyone was relieved secretly. They were really afraid that Chen Mo would go straight to them. With the powerful power of Chen Mo, they will inevitably break their tendons and even lose their lives. After all, the most powerful human warrior standing in front of them is killing people. If he is regarded as an enemy, the consequences are unimaginable. They are also secretly glad that Chen Mo's weapon is not around. Otherwise, Chen Mo, who once killed 9 snake soldiers like chopping melons and vegetables, might have cut them all in two as soon as they entered the door. This is the Bureau of Land Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics Support. Our predecessor is the Strategic Science Reserve. Under Chen Mo's coercion, the female agent hurriedly reported to her family and put the relationship on first so as not to let Chen Mo really start. When the female agent finished, Chen Mo's eyes softened a little, so she continued. "I'm very sorry for the performance just now. We just think it's time for you to accept it." Chen Mo did not speak, but still looked at her expressionless, waiting for her to continue. Now it's obvious that this situation can't be concealed anymore. After hesitating for a while, the female agent directly told the truth. "You've been sleeping, Commander." "I slept for about 70 years. The female agent said slowly. Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, Director's Office. A bald black man in a black overcoat and blindfold sat opposite Chen Mo and told him about the 70 years he had been sleeping. In his last battle, the Hydra was completely wiped out. Then, without the Hydra's control, the Allied forces began to launch an attack on a large scale, falling into the final defeat of the multi-line war. Hitler committed suicide, and World War II ended. After the World War II, the Science and Strategy Reserve Team was reorganized and became today's Bureau of Land Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics. Under the supervision of the International Security Council, it is specially responsible for handling various strange events, such as the huge aircraft buried in the ice. Sitting opposite Chen Mo, the bare-headed black man, the current director of the Department of Homeland Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics, one-eyed Nick Fry, after giving Chen Mo a brief account of the main history and current situation, he looked at Chen Mo and said, "Commander Chen Mo, what are you going to do next?" Chen Mo pretends to ponder for a while and looks up and asks, "How are Steve and Howard doing now?" Nick Fry sniffed and paused for a moment before slowly saying, "They are all gone." Chen Mo's face was a little sad after listening, and he continued to ask, "What about the others? Agent Carter, Baki, Huang Quan, Han Qing, Luo Zhen?" Nick Fry shook his head gently. "Sorry." After a while, seeing Chen Mo lost, Nick Fry said, "You can stay here." Faced with Nick Fry's invitation, Chen Mo shook his head. "No, thank you," said Chen Mo, rising from his chair and going out. "Where are you going?" Nick Fry asked in the back. "New York." A flight from Washington came to a slow stop at the end of the runway at New York Airport. A few minutes later, the cabin door opened and the passengers on the plane came out in turn. Wearing a black suit and a cold face, Chen Mo also came down from the plane. The conversation with Nick Fry that day let Chen Mo know that he didn't know the existence of Shendun Bureau, let alone that Steve and others were only dead, not really dead. Obviously, the current director of Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau is not a member of Shendun Bureau. According to Chen Mo's information, the director of the Bureau of Homeland Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics Support is appointed by the International Security Council, which is composed of representatives from the 5 permanent members of the United Nations. So the Shendun Bureau can't directly participate in the appointment of the director, and can't guarantee that every director is the person of Shendun Bureau. In spite of this, Shendun Bureau still firmly controls the Bureau of Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support in secret. Because, in addition to being unable to appoint the director directly, the core personnel of the Bureau of Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support are actually mostly the personnel of Shendun Bureau, who hold most of the rights of the Bureau. If the director appointed by the Security Council is not competent, his orders will not be carried out at all, and all powers will be suspended. After his official return, Chen Mo didn't stay in Washington much longer. He took his own things and new ID cards and arrived in New York. After taking a taxi to Brooklyn, Chen Mo got off at a street ahead of time and walked to his destination. Just now, sitting in the car all the way, Chen Mo can clearly see that at this time, compared with 70 years ago, New York has changed dramatically. Chapter 142. But walking on the familiar street, Chen Mo found that the environment here did not change much when he left. The red brick buildings on both sides of the street are still the same as before, but they have more time than before. With the historical atmosphere of vicissitudes, the narrow street is cleaner and cleaner than before. The black retro street lamp post is old and mottled, but it still stands upright beside the street. The faint yellow light has plated the street full of the flavor of the times with a layer of gold, which represents the years. The whole street is quiet and serene. It was evening, and the lights were beginning to shine, and the windows of the houses on both sides were already lighted. In front of a single 3-story building, Chen Mo stopped and stood on the street, looking at the familiar martial arts school in front of him. Chen Mo could not help but show a trace of nostalgia on his face. The bright light comes from the window of the martial arts school, and a fierce fight sounds from the door. Chen Mo couldn't help but smile, stepped to the door, raised his hand and knocked gently on the door of the martial arts school. Chen Mo gave the 7 commandments to Wang Kun at that time. Now 70 years later, Wang Kun, who is over 100 years old, no longer cares about the affairs of the gang. He gave the 7 commandments to his son and grandson to take care of them. He supported himself in the martial arts school and watched his grandson practice martial arts. Wang Jin, Wang Kun's great-grandson, grew up listening to Chen Mo's story. His biggest dream is not to take over the 7 commandments and become the underground emperor of New York and even the whole United States, but to become a powerful superhero like Chen Mo, to eliminate the evil forces and maintain world peace. Wang Kun's family has been a single story for so many years. His son and grandson spent most of their energy on the management and development of the 7 Commandments gang. After 70 years of development, this organization, which was originally in charge of the underground forces in Brooklyn, New York, has now developed into a giant, controlling more than half of the underground forces in the United States. However, they did not violate Chen Mo's family commandments. In addition to smuggling, casinos, nightclubs, and other gray industries, drugs, robbery, trafficking in human beings, and prostitution have been strictly prohibited. Once discovered, they will be punished severely. It is precisely because of the existence of the 7 commandments that the public security in the whole United States is far more stable than in reality. Although many criminal acts are no longer touched by them, under the guidance of Chen Mo, they have made great progress in many legal industries. In the construction, transportation, food, medicine, clothing, animal husbandry, hotel, real estate, and other industries, the Seven Commandments are firmly occupying a place. Many well-known large enterprises and groups, in fact, are all the industries of the Seven Commandments. In terms of total assets, it is a huge astronomical number, which is incomparable to any company. As the future successor of this huge force, Wang Jin is not interested in the affairs of the gang at all. After graduating from university, he didn't follow his father's request and went into the gang to help manage the affairs of the gang. Instead, he moved directly into the martial arts school and practiced martial arts every day with Wang Kun, who retired. With the improved super soldier serum provided by Albert, their lifespan is very long. Wang Kun, who is over 100 years old, looks like he is in his 50s. He is very strong. However, he is not in a hurry to let Wang Jin take over the Seven Commandments. With Wang Kun's nod permission, they let him practice martial arts in the martial arts hall. Wang Jin's favorite place when he was a kid was not the luxurious and huge family manor in Green Street, but this simple martial arts school, because there are all kinds of magical stories here. When he was a child, he listened to Wang Kun's stories. When he grew up, he inexplicably injected super soldier serum, and his physical fitness tripled in a short period of time. Then he knew that all the magical things he had been listening to as stories were true. One man and two guns killed a dozen mafia people who came to the door in a flash. He dived into the wharf alone, saved his grandparents and grandfather in the siege of dozens of gunmen, and wiped out all the enemies. 7 people broke into the headquarters of the 2 mafia parties at night, and wiped out the 2 families overnight. With bare hands and empty fists, 7 fist seals were left on the thick tower shield to frighten all the underground forces and form the 7-ring gang. In the European battlefield, the sword split the tanks, tore the armored vehicles, and relied on a long sword to destroy the powerful Hydra army, destroy the base, destroy the huge Hydra organization, and rewrite the war situation. Wang Jin listens to Wang Kun's story again, and the shock in his heart is beyond expression. To this legendary founder who founded this martial arts school and set up the 7 Commandments sect together, he is no longer the simple worship of the powerful protagonist in the story, but the real reverence and yearning from the heart. How he hoped to see the legendary hero with his own eyes. Unfortunately, he has been missing for 70 years. It is said that in the final battle of destroying Hydra, in order to avoid the bombing of human cities, he flew a Hydra super plane and fell into the sea. Wang Jin has always been deeply sorry for this. That evening, Wang Kun and Wang Jin practiced in the martial arts school. Although Wang Kun is over 100 years old, he seems to be only in his early 50s. His physical fitness is no worse than that of the young Wang Jinsi, and even stronger. With so many years of hard work, his kung fu is far above that of Wang Jin. If he didn't keep his hand on purpose, Wang Jin would not be able to support a few moves under his hand. However, Wang Jin's fighting talent is not uncommon, and he also laid a very solid foundation when he was a child. Since he graduated from university and returned to the martial arts school, his strength has actually improved a lot under Wang Kun's guidance. Although he can't do a few moves in Wang Kun's hands, he is already a fighter outside. When they were fighting fiercely, a knock on the door suddenly broke off their fight. After the strengthening of the super soldier serum, the 5 senses of the 2 men are very sharp. Although they are fighting fiercely, they still hear the knocking at the door clearly. Hearing this, they stopped fighting. Few people came to the martial arts school. Wang Kun's family would give a notice in advance. They couldn't imagine who would knock at this time. Wang Jin looks up at Wang Kun. "Open the door," Wang Kun said. "If he wants to come, maybe it's passers-by who doesn't know the situation. The hidden guards around the martial arts school are only used to guard against a large number of enemies with threats. Ordinary people who don't have weapons will not be stopped. Before, someone came to learn martial arts, so Wang Kun didn't think much about it. He told him that this is a private martial arts school, that's not to accept apprentices. Wang Jin hears Wang Kun's order, but he turns around to open the door. Just now, he feels that he is in a good condition. He wanted to see if he could hold on to Wang Kun for a while, but he was interrupted. However, he will not be angry with the people outside. After all, they are not cruel gangs. They are gentle to ordinary people. He is just curious about who knocks on the door. When he came to the door, Wang Jin slowly opened it, and the man standing outside appeared in his eyes. This is a tall young man. He looks about his age. His sharp face is a little cold. His eyes are deep and sharp. He seems to be able to penetrate people's hearts. He was wearing a fit black suit. He was handsome, noble, and elegant. The momentum of the whole person was extraordinary. Wang Jin instinctively felt that he was not an ordinary person. Although the person in front of him looks cold and fierce, Wang Jin, who has a keen sense, does not feel any hostility from him. On the contrary, from Chen Mo's eyes, he can feel a very similar feeling when Wang Kun looks at him, just like an elder looking at his own younger generation. This feeling is very strange. Standing in front of him is clearly a young man like him. In spite of his doubts, he asked politely, "Who are you looking for?" Chen Mo looks at the handsome young man in front of him. From his face, which is similar to Wang Kun's, Chen Mo can easily guess his identity. Wang Kun's great-grandson was almost as big as before when he arrived at the martial arts school. Now his great-grandson has grown up. A little sigh in his heart, Chen Mo said slowly, "I'm looking for Wang Kun." Wang Kun. Wang Jin hears the words, but he is a little confused. As the head of the family, almost no one dares to call Wang Kunhungry's name directly, so Wang Jin doesn't respond for a while. Chen Mo is talking about his grandfather, but someone has responded. After Wang Kun asked Wang Jin to open the door, he turned to the sofa beside him and planned to have a cup of tea and rest. Later, he continued to practice his great-grandson. As for the people outside the gate, they are just ordinary people who go to the wrong place. Let Wang Jin send them by himself. Only when he had just lifted the cup, the familiar voice calling his name at the door made his hand shake, and all the tea was spilled out. He can't be too surprised to be able to name him. Although no one has mentioned his name for many years, even those who know his existence, many people don't know his name, but there are always people who know his name. But the familiar voice did not keep him calm at all. Put down the cup with a bang, Wang Kun stood up abruptly and walked towards the door with excited face. At a distance, Wang Kun saw the familiar figure through the open door. Compared with 70 years ago, there was almost no change, but the momentum seemed to be stronger. Wang Kun has been in charge of the Seven Commandments gang for so many years, holding the power, and his mood has become extremely calm. But at this moment his face is red with excitement and his lips are murmuring. "The owner, you're back at last." Looking at Chen Mo, who is sitting on the sofa and enjoying his tea leisurely, Wang Jin only feels his brain in chaos. Chapter 143. This young man, who is about his own age, is the legendary curator in the mouth of the Lord. My idol, the legendary hero 70 years ago, the strongest human warrior. Looking at the Chen Mo in front of him, he always had a kind of unreal feeling which was too mysterious. After 70 years of disappearance, he was thought to have been buried in the sea. He actually came back, and it seems that there is no change with 70 years ago, and there is no sign of aging, which is obviously beyond his understanding. "Son of a bitch, don't hurry up and kneel down to see your grandfather." Just took a sip of the tea Wang Kun poured for him. Hearing his words, Chen Mo ordered to spray out the tea in his mouth. Seeing Wang Jinjin coming forward to kowtow, Chen Mo put down the cup with a wry smile. "All right, Ah Kun, what's the time? I'm still doing this. The head of the martial arts school, you are their elders and the founder of the martial arts school. You should kneel down. I'll call all my sons and grandchildren to kowtow to you later." Chen Mo is a little speechless about Wang Kun's persistence. The people who practice martial arts attach great importance to the rules and etiquette. Chen Mo returns after 70 years. It's really right to call on the younger generation to visit his ancestors. However, Chen Mo didn't really spend 70 years and was not a traditional martial artist like Wang Kun. In ancient times, as a lord and king, Chen Mo didn't feel anything when he accepted his subjects kneeling. In modern times, Chen Mo still felt uncomfortable when he let some 60, 70-year-old people kneel and kowtow to himself. "No, I'll be here for a few quiet days. I have to leave after a while. I don't need to inform them." Chen Mo waved and rejected Wang Kun's plan. Seeing Chen Mo's decision, Wang Kun has to nod. That night, Chen Mo stayed in the martial arts school. His room has been kept, basically maintaining the original state. Every place in the martial arts school still retains its original appearance. Even the furnishings have not changed. Of course, many things have been replaced with new ones. After all, 70 years have passed, and many things cannot withstand the erosion of the years. But Wang Kun, as like as two peas, had changed them to the same as they were. Even if they had stopped production, Wang Kun would have made special plans to keep the martial arts museum intact. In his view, this martial art hall was always Chen Mo's, and he was only looking after it. He also believed that Chen Mo would return later, and now he finally did. In the next few days, Chen Mo had a leisurely tea in the martial arts school, practiced sword and dueled with Wang Kun. After years of war and killing in the world of Night Legend, Chen Mo's fighting skills have been greatly enhanced, especially his swordsmanship, which was greatly improved by Alexander Corvina's. Compared with his swordsmanship when he left the world of Captain of the United States, Chen Mo's swordsmanship is totally different. Wang Kun's strength is also much stronger than that of that year. Chen Mo's promotion is mainly in fencing, while Wang Kun's is mainly in unarmed combat. In the first few years of taking charge of the Seven Commandments sect, Wang Kun did not go to the battle in person, which was also a long experience. With 70 years of hard work, Kung Fu has been promoted to a very high level. It's not too much to be called a Grand Master. Both of them have learned a lot from each other and greatly improved their fighting skills. Wang Jin also benefited a lot. He was shocked by Chen Mo's powerful swordsmanship, which made him feel like he saw a new world. The original sword could still be used in this way. Chen Mo didn't rush to see Tony Stark. He didn't know if his early intervention would affect the birth of Iron Man. It's not just steel, it's also the transformation of Tony's mind. The core energy of the steel battle suit, the mini arc reactor, was made after he was kidnapped by terrorists. At the same time, the prototype of the steel battle suit, Mark I, was born. At that time, he was on the way back to the airport after demonstrating the Jericho missile. The motorcade was attacked by terrorist organizations. A missile exploded beside him, and a large number of shrapnel were embedded in his body. Although Dr. Ethan has operated on him to take out most of the shrapnel, there are still several shrapnel near the heart that cannot be taken out. At any time, they may follow the blood into the heart and kill him. They can only be absorbed by an electromagnet put into the body to prevent them from entering the heart with the blood. At first, it was a car battery that was used to power the electromagnet. The terrorists forced Tony to make Jericho missiles for them, and Tony knew that even if he did make missiles for them, these murderous terrorists would not let him go. In such a desperate situation, Tony Stark's potential has exploded completely. In the cave where the terrorists imprisoned him, using simple tools, he designed and manufactured the mini arc reactor and Mark I steel battle suit, and successfully defeated the terrorists and escaped. Before that, the miniaturization of the arc reactor has not been realized. The arc reactor in Stark Industry has a diameter of more than 20 meters, which is very huge. Compared with the fist-sized mini arc reactor finally manufactured by Tony Stark, the technical gap is obviously huge. And such a huge technological breakthrough is obviously not normal research can be achieved in a short time. The design of iron and steel battle suit is more brilliant. Many technologies applied in the interior are brand new. If it's normal, it's difficult to complete it in a short time even if he puts forward ideas for his design. All kinds of technology and design bottlenecks will seriously hinder the development, and it is absolutely impossible to be in a supernatural state of talent and inspiration, just like in the movie. All kinds of new technologies are easily broken through. The whole design and manufacturing process has not encountered any bottlenecks and difficulties, and is completely completed in one go. Tony Stark was faced with the threat of death and the huge pressure of survival. Under the complex conditions of his environment, circumstances, mentality, thought, will, inspiration, and so on, he finally gave birth to this epoch-making product. Change the time, change the place, change the relaxed environment, and the steel war clothes may never be born. Tony Stark, he will always be just a proud playboy. It is obvious that the most powerful and unique technology in the movie world cannot be easily manufactured. They are either the high-tech and dark technology accumulated over a long period of time, or they are created by accident due to fate under the incomparable coincidence and various special circumstances. Just like the original Edelman shield of the American captain, the perfect blood of the Legend of the Knight, and the iron battle suit of the Iron Man, their birth process can't be duplicated at all. So Chenmo won't change the plot easily. All he has to do is wait for the change, wait for the birth of steel armor, and a Tony Stark who has grown up after the change and can bear his responsibility bravely. Chenmo didn't have to wait for a long time. Soon, he received the information from Hydra. Tony Stark will go to Afghanistan in a private plane in 3 days and show the American army in Afghanistan his latest Jericho missile. At this time, Tony Stark just regarded weapons as toys. With his amazing talent in weapons, he constantly developed and manufactured more advanced and powerful weapons. He didn't even know who his company and Stark Industries sold their weapons to, what kind of people were using them, and what kind of disaster they brought to many people in the world. But soon he will know. Chenmo is not in a hurry to start. It's not the time yet. Besides, he's waiting for something. 3 days later, the Chinese martial arts school. After lunch, Chenmo is sitting on the sofa with Wang Kun to have tea and chat. His meals these days are all cooked by Wang Kun's wife. Although he is in charge of the huge 7 Commandments sect, which can be said to be a country of great wealth, Wang Kun's life has always been very simple. In addition to Wang Jin, who moved in after graduation, only Wang Kun and his wife are in the martial arts school. At the beginning, there were some apprentices practicing martial arts in the martial arts school. Later, Wang Kun was the only one left in the martial arts school, and he was busy with helping all day. After several apprentices graduated, Wang Kun arranged them to help the gang in charge of the gang, and then there was no apprentice again. There are no nannies and servants in the martial arts school. They take care of their daily life by themselves. Chenmo's room is always cleaned by them. Wang Kun's wife reads while practicing martial arts. When they have a rest, they sit together to watch TV and chat. The life is simple, plain, and full. Wang Kun's wife also injected the improved serum. Although she didn't practice martial arts, her physical quality was much better than that of the ordinary martial arts practitioners. She looked younger than Wang Kun. She was in her 40s, so it's nothing to say about some housework. In the past 70 years, the cooking skills are much better than those of imperial chefs and Michelin chefs. The knife work can make everyone blush. Chenmo, the king who has eaten delicious food in the Middle Ages for several years, praised his dishes. Chenmo can't help but ask her to do more, take it in the space, save the next time to enter the world similar to the Legend of Night, and eat the monotonous bread, barbecue, and sausage. Chenmo and Wang Kun are chatting. Wang Kun's wife comes out with a plate of cakes. Knowing that Chen Mo likes the dishes she makes, she is also very happy. She is a traditional woman and is not willing to help. In this long time, in addition to reading, her biggest hobby is to study cooking. She is good at Chinese food, Western food, Japanese food, and dessert. It's the biggest recognition for her to get Chen Mo's praise. Chen Mo doesn't hide too much from them. Chen Mo has the ability to store things. They have known for a long time that since Chen Mo likes it, she will make some special things for Chen Mo after every meal. Today, after lunch, she made some Chinese cakes and brought them to the tea table. "Master, try the crystal osmanthus cake I just made." Chen Mo's eyes brightened as he looked at the plate. A crystal osmanthus cake, the size of a baby's fist and crystal clear, was placed neatly on the plate. The surface was dotted with dried osmanthus with the size of a little yellow rice grain. A long fragrance of osmanthus pervaded the plate, which shocked his spirit. Chen Mo pinched one and bit it gently. It's soft and glutinous. It's refreshing but not greasy. The strong fragrance spreads out in the mouth. It's mellow and sweet. It's filled between the teeth for a long time. Throw the remaining half of the crystal osmanthus cake into his mouth. With a wave of Chen's hand, she directly put the whole plate of osmanthus cake on the tea table into the space, and let Wang Kun's hand just stretched out from the opposite side, which can only be held in the air foolishly. "If you want your wife to do it for you, I should go." Wang Kun reluctantly takes back his hand and compares it with Chen Mo in speed. He can't win it all, but when he hears the words behind him, he looks up at Chen Mo with some doubts. At this time, the gate of the martial arts school was knocked from the outside. After the knock, Wang Kun couldn't help looking at Chen Mo. Chapter 144. "Open the door, it's for me." Wang Kun nodded and told Wang Jin to open the door. All of us here are his great-grandparents. It naturally falls to him to open the door. As Wang Jin walked to the door, he thought in his heart, "There are few people in the martial arts school at ordinary times. My grandfather just came back a few days ago, so someone came back. I don't know who is coming here." With curiosity, Wang Jin opened the door and saw a smart man in a straight suit in his 40s standing outside. It didn't look special. Wang Jin looked at the man and thought of it in disappointment. Without saying much, the man of Wang Jin dynasty reached out his hand and asked him to enter the room. Looking at Chen Mo sitting on the sofa in the room, the man couldn't help but flashed a trace of excitement in his eyes. Then he said solemnly with a straight face, "Commander, this is Agent Phil Carlson from the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Service." Seeing Chen Mo nodding, Agent Carlson continued, "I'm here to announce two things to you." Chen Mo didn't speak. He raised his hand and made a gesture of asking. "First of all, in view of your outstanding contribution to the Allies in World War II, you have been nominated by the President, approved by the Election Committee and the Senate, and decided to grant you the rank of Major General. Your original Scientific Strategic Reserve has been reorganized into Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. Through the resolution of the Security Council, you have been appointed as the Special Force Commander, Agent Level 10 of Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. Chen Mo knows that the news of his awakening will inevitably be reported to all countries. There is no problem with his strength and position. His remarkable achievements in the war under the neutrality of World War II are the best proof. Now Steve and others have been pretending to die. They urgently need a new high-end combat power to deal with various threats. Chen Mo, who appears at this time, is the best choice. He is the senior of the Strategic Science Reserve Team, the commander of the Special Forces, the annihilator of Hydra, and the most powerful man in the world. They have no reason to let Chen Mo be buried. Although Chen Mo didn't pay attention to Nick Fry's detention after waking up, and left the Bureau of Homeland Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics Support directly, they didn't give up their minds, but they came up with a move to take the lead and then play it out. In the name of the country and the Allies, they directly appointed him as the commander of the Special Forces. After all, the Department of Homeland Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics Support was reorganized from Chen Mo's original Scientific Strategic Reserve Team. The purpose of appointing Chen Mo as a Special Force commander again is to play the emotional card. According to Chen Mo's conjecture, all of this is Nick Fry's handwriting. Because Chen Mo joined the Bureau of Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support, he benefited the most from it. Of course, it's not that he had selfish intentions, but he was also to enhance the strength of the Bureau of Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support, better deal with all kinds of unexpected threats, and ensure the safety of all human beings. So, although calculated, Chen Mo didn't feel disgusted. Moreover, although Nick Fry is the director of the Department of Homeland Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics Support, it is still difficult to complete such a major military rank and position appointment in such a short time. Even if Chen Murray is qualified, it is worth doing so. In fact, it also has the hidden power of Hydra and Shandong Bureau. These two huge organizations, hidden in the dark for more than 70 years, have an amazing control over the power. Driven by them, Nick Fry's plan can be successfully passed in such a short time. Although some of his strange things went too smoothly, he could not think of any other possibility. It was understood that the military and politicians were in line with his ideas, and they all valued Chen Mo's powerful power and great role in the future, so the whole plan would go so smoothly. Chen Mo went back to New York not only to see Wang Kun and the martial arts school, but most importantly, the headquarters of Shandong Bureau is in New York. On the night after returning to New York, Chen Mo evaded the secret agents and quietly left the martial arts school. Relying on his keen perception and agile skills, he dodged all kinds of surveillance, walked through the dark alleys on the roof, and finally came to an abandoned factory in the suburb of New York. The factory covers a large area, with mottled traces on the abandoned factory buildings, office buildings, thick pipes and towering large-scale equipment. All the steel surfaces have been covered with thick rust, and large vines are growing wantonly everywhere, crawling with brick walls and pipes. The whole factory looks decadent and desolate. In the night, there is a more gloomy and horrible feeling. In the past 70 years, there have been many more failures here than Chen Mo remembered. Who would have thought that the Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau is under control behind the scenes, and the powerful Shield Bureau is hidden in this dilapidated abandoned factory? Of course, all these are just appearances. Under this dilapidated appearance, there are many heavily defended checkpoints. Chen Mo stands in front of the big, heavy, rusty steel gate, and a light invisible to the naked eye slowly sweeps through him. Click. With the light scanning finished, a small door on one side of the steel gate slowly opened. Chen Mo walks into the abandoned factory from the small door, and the open door slowly closes behind Chen Mo again. After entering the factory, Chen Mo did not go on, but turned right and walked into an abandoned large factory on the side of the gate. At night, the workshop is quiet and dark, and the moonlight shines in through the windows on the ceiling, which can vaguely see the situation inside. In addition to a large space, there are several rooms connected together near the wall, such as offices and storage rooms. Chen Mo walked into one of them without stopping. Although the light at night is very weak, it doesn't have a great influence on Chen Magu. It looks like a dressing room. There is no window except one outside. There are a row of old and heavy iron cabinets next to the wall in the position near the wall. After entering the room, Chen Mo closed the door again, and the whole room was completely in darkness. Chen Mo, however, was not affected. He took 2 steps forward and stood in front of the iron chest. A light invisible to the naked eye like the front gate reappeared. When it crossed Chen Mo, the camera hidden in the corner around him started, and the image in Chen Mo's dark was clearly photographed. Soon, the cupboard in front of Chen Mo opened silently like two sides. A soft light came from the split position of the rail, and a smooth and flat silver metal door appeared. The metal door opened slowly. Behind the door is a small square space like an elevator. The white light shines down from the top, making the whole space bright. Chen Mo went through the passage formed by the crack of the iron cabinet and walked into the elevator. The elevator door closed slowly and automatically. There was no key inside the elevator. When the elevator door closed, the elevator automatically moved downward. After more than 10 seconds, the elevator stopped steadily. The door of the elevator opened. A bright, broad science fiction hall appeared in front of Chen Mo's eyes. A shield-shaped sign with a long sword in the middle hung high on the wall above the hall. A man in his 30s with a short beard was standing in the hall. He saw Chen Mo appear and stride towards him. "Hi, boss. We haven't seen each other for a long time." It's Howard Stark who is now in charge of the shield. Although his words are still so cynical, his tone is full of uncontrollable excitement. Chen Mo's cold face also showed a smile. He stepped forward and gave Howard a big hug, then pushed him away. "I haven't taken your boss to a good tour yet. It's been 70 years. It's changed a lot." At first, it was a small secret base used by the famed Dr. Abraham Erskine to study the serum of super soldiers. Later, Dr. Myron Maclean joined in and successfully developed the alloy. It's just that compared with 70 years ago, the change here is too big. If it used to be a simple underground bunker, now it's an advanced large base full of sense of technology. In the past 70 years, Shendun Bureau has been secretly controlling the situation. From the initial Scientific Strategic Reserve Team to the present Bureau of Land Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics Support, the whole situation has been under their control. Most of the core members who hold the rights in these two organizations are Shendun Bureau people. Since the Director General has been directly appointed by the International Security Council, there have been selfish, ambitious, and incompetent directors in the past 70 years. But they can't lift any waves. Some of them are completely elevated. They can't interfere in organizing anymore. Some of them are executed secretly and died of accidents. It can be said that the Shendun Bureau has guaranteed the purity and stability of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau behind the scenes. It has also helped them accomplish many arduous tasks and deal with a large number of threats to international security. Chen Mo didn't stay in the Shendun Bureau base much. He roughly visited the base and understood the current situation of Shendun Bureau. Finally, Chen Mo told Howard his plan and left. Howard had intended to wake up Colonel Phillips and Steve and others, but Chen Mo stopped him. He still had important things to do. It's obviously not the time to reminisce about the past. Driven by Hydra and Aegis, Nick Fry's plan to recruit Chen Mo went well. When Agent Phil Coulson put Major General's rank, epaulets, and uniform on the table, he was afraid that Chen would refuse. However, he was obviously worried too much. Chen tried his best to refuse. Looking at the Major General's uniform on the table, Chen Mo's face did not change at all. In the worried eyes of Agent Coulson, Chen Mo stood up and looked at Turson's eyes and said solemnly and slowly, "Agent Coulson, you've been drafted. Congratulations on joining the special team." Agent Phil Coulson looks at Chen Mo in a dazed way. Chapter 145. Shouldn't he refuse scornfully, and then persuade him with the righteousness of safeguarding world peace and protecting all mankind? Who would have thought that he had agreed so simply, and all the speeches he had prepared for a long time were useless? But what was the meaning of his last words? "I was drafted." For Chen Mo, the nine-headed dictator and the core leader of the Shendun Bureau, the Major General of the U.S. Army, and the commander of the Special Forces of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau have no attraction. but it will be convenient for him to have such a clear identity for the next operation. After all, although the strength of Hydra and Shendan Bureau is huge, they are hidden behind the scenes and are not suitable for public appearance. It is not convenient to use them. Chenmo joined the U.S. Army with Steve more than 70 years ago. Even after joining the Strategic Science Reserve jointly established by various allies, he now accepts the rank of Major General of the U. Moreover, Chenmo did not intend to accept their leadership and command even though he accepted the two appointments. I've got the right, the obligation. Lao Tzu is already maintaining world peace. If anyone dares to tell others what to do, Chenmo will let him know what to call self-humiliation. Of course, the military, the government, the International Security Council, Nick Fry and others will not naively think that they can command Chenmo at will. Looking through Chenmo's dusty archives, we can find that Chenmo always behaves in a vigorous, determined, arrogant, cold, and rebellious manner. Chenmo is an absolute doer. He is committed to maintaining world peace and fighting against evil forces. However, he has his own principles and ways of doing things. He has no awe of the powerful. It is not realistic to command him like ordinary soldiers. That's why Nick Frey felt that Chenmo's appointment was passed too smoothly. Chenmo was so rebellious that he thought his plan would have some resistance. Now it seems that these politicians and the military are not stupid enough to see the value of Chenmo. They don't expect Chenmo to absolutely obey the arrangement. He exists more as a strategic force. In general, they can deal with it by themselves. Once a major event occurs, Chenmo will come to use. When it comes to the critical moment of human interests, he will go all out. Chenmo destroyed the powerful Hydra and changed the war situation of World War II. At the last moment, in order to avoid the city being bombed, causing a large number of casualties, he drove the Hydra super bomber into the sea without hesitation. His mind and character had no problems, which was the reason why they dared to give Chenmo their rights. Chenmo is a trump card for them. Just pay tribute every day, and he will show his great value at the critical moment. They only need proper supervision. Agent Phil Coulson is a good choice. He is steady, skillful, and has strong organizational and operational abilities. He can help Chenmo well, assist him in his work, and play a very good role in supervision. So Nick Fry did not object to Chenmo's recruitment of Phil Coulson into the special team. Although Chenmo only plans to enjoy the rights after accepting the appointment, and has no plan to accept the command, in fact, Chenmo has done his duty. 70 years ago, he started the plan of Ice Warrior, preparing for the future alien invasion. In Chenmo's view, the whole world is his, and it's his responsibility as the Lord of the Earth to maintain the security of his territory. As for now, it's just like the king pretends to pay a private visit and installs himself as a special envoy to facilitate his actions. That afternoon, Chenmo and Special Agent Phil Coulson returned to Washington by helicopter. As the helicopter landed on the tarmac on the roof of DLSA's headquarters building, Tony Stark, on the other side, was also coming off his private jet. This is Baghlan Air Force Base of the United States in Afghanistan. By the side of the gangway of the aircraft, a dozen senior officers of the U.S. military and the Afghan military are standing there ready to welcome Tony Stark. "Hello, General." Tony Stark, in a straight suit and sunglasses, walked briskly down the gangway with a wild smile on his face and extended his hand to a senior American officer standing at the front. The base commander smiled and shook Tony's hand. "Hello, Mr. Stark. We are looking forward to your weapon display." A desolate no-man's land dozens of kilometers away from Baghlan Air Force Base. On one side of the highland, a dozen senior officers from both countries are listening to Tony Stark's speech. Is it frightening or respectable? I wonder if it's possible to have both. Next, I'd like to introduce you to the finest products in Stark's Freedom Weapon series. It is the first missile system equipped with propulsor technology developed exclusively by us. It has been said that the best weapon is one that never needs to be used. I have reservations myself. I prefer weapons that only need to be used once. It's the experience of our fathers and the experience of the military. This experience has been proved by history. Take a chance and try this weapon. I can assure you that the bad guys will never want to get out of the hole again. Tony finished, waved to the operator on the other side, and then a missile vehicle not far from the crowd moved. With a sound of motor running, the missile on the weapon rack was lifted up and began to adjust its direction, aiming at a mountain a few kilometers away from the crowd. Then, one of the 3 missiles was launched, and a strong white flame jet was ejected from the tail, which pushed the missile away from the weapon rack and flew towards the air at a high speed. The powerful thruster gives the missile a very high speed, and it soon crosses most of the distance, flies over the target mountains, and starts to lower its altitude and fall down. A flash of fire suddenly lit up, and the shell of the missile body was thrown out, revealing dozens of small missiles arranged orderly inside. These small missiles were ejected immediately, and the thrusters at the tail started at the same time, which pushed them to fly to the mountains below at a high speed. Under the guidance of the positioning system, dozens of small missiles were evenly spread out to attack the whole mountain. I solemnly recommend the Jericho missile. Tony Stark finished, slowly raised his hands, stretched out on both sides of his body. Behind him, dozens of missiles fell down from the air with tail flames, hitting the mountain range, causing a violent explosion. The earth in the mountain was lifted by the explosion and rushed to the air, which was hundreds of meters high. The strong shock wave generated by the explosion also rushed towards the surrounding area at high speed. The strong wave of shock wave brings a lot of dust on the ground and pours up from behind Tony Stark. It turns the people who can't respond to the blast on their backs and doesn't know where their hats are. Tony Stark had been prepared for it, but he took a few steps forward with the impact of the shock wave. Then he neatly arranged his clothes and walked to a few large metal boxes with Stark logo on them. Opened the lid, a burst of cold air came out, and the bottom of the box rose automatically. The wine glasses arranged in the card slot in order, ice and several bottles of wine were lifted to the top of the box. Tony Stark picked up a whiskey with ice and said as he walked, "Buy more than $500 million at a time and get free wine. For peace." The whole weapon display was very successful, and the huge power of the Jericho missile excited all the soldiers present. In a subsequent call with Obadiah Stein, the company's elder, Tony was confident that he would make another big profit this time. However, on the way back to the base, they met with violent terrorist attacks. Tony's soldiers were all killed, and he was seriously injured by a bomb made by Stark Industry launched by the terrorists. When he woke up, he found that he was locked in a cave, and his chest was embedded with an electromagnet which connected a car battery with a wire. It turns out that after the explosion of the missile, many shrapnel were shot into his body. Dr. Ethan, who was detained with him by terrorists, operated on him and took out most of the shrapnel. However, several shrapnel could not be taken out close to the heart. Once they enter the heart accompaniment, Tony Stark's heart will be slowly torn and his heart will be broken to death. The electromagnet can hold the shrapnel, prevent them from entering the heart and save his life. Then the terrorists asked Tony Stark to make the powerful Jericho missile he had demonstrated for them. He was in a bad state. In addition, he found that all the terrorist equipment was made by Stark Industry. Tony was discouraged and had no fighting spirit. He planned to wait and die. Fortunately, with Dr. Ethan's encouragement, Tony finally cheered up. He knew that even if he made missiles for them, they would not let him go, so he promised on the surface, but actually planned to escape. In a desperate situation, Tony's mind is very clear. A wonderful idea is quickly formed in his mind, and soon completed the whole design. With Dr. Ethan's help, and using the tools and materials provided by terrorists, Tony quickly built a small arc reactor, replacing the heavy car battery, and directly installed it on his chest. More than 10 days later, Mark I was finally finished. It's time for action. But when the two began to assemble Mark I on Tony, they dodged the surveillance cameras and aroused the suspicion of the terrorists who had been monitoring outside. Then they sent several armed terrorists to the cave where Tony and his two were imprisoned to check. Several people shouted outside the cell door, but no one came. Several terrorists saw it and opened the cell door directly. Tony's bomb on the door exploded immediately and killed them all. But the explosion will soon attract more enemies, and Mark I's steel battle suit program has not been completed. They are in a very dangerous situation. Seeing the critical situation, in order to buy Tony time, Dr. Ethan picked up a terrorist's rifle and rushed out of the prison door, intending to use his life to buy Tony time. Although he never fought, and all the bullets hit the top of the cave, Dr. Ethan drove out several terrorists who had rushed into the cave again with his fierce shooting, without saving ammunition and a relentless momentum. Only when he roared to drive several terrorists who were afraid of death to rush to the cave entrance, he found that a dozen terrorists were waiting there and a dozen black holes pointed at him. Ethan put down his rifle in a dispirited way. He should have had enough time for Tony. His family is dead. I should go with them. At this time, a fierce shot suddenly came from outside the hole. The sudden gunfire outside the cave stopped the terrorists who surrounded Dr. Ethan. Chapter 146. Go out and have a look, the bare-headed leader of the terrorists, with a gloomy face, said to several people around him. The men he chose turned around and rushed out of the cave with guns. The rest of them continued to point their rifles at Ethan, and the hope that had just appeared on his face turned into despair again. Just as they were about to pull the trigger, several terrorists who had just rushed out ran back faster than before. At the same time, for a while, the bombs came in behind them, shooting several people to the ground from behind. There was no sound. The rest of the terrorists in the cave can't care about Ethan anymore. They turn around and point their guns out of the cave. Unfortunately, their speed is slower. In Ethan's vision, with several terrorists suddenly returned to be knocked down, two quick figures suddenly appeared outside the cave. One of them, dressed in a stiff black suit and holding a pistol in his hand, leaned out half of his body under the cover of the mountain rocks on the side of the cave and kept shooting at a group of terrorists in the cave. The other is a black combat suit, very tall, big and strong, but has an agility that does not match the size. After killing several terrorists who escaped back, he quickly passed the cave entrance and hid on the other side of the cave. Before the rest of the terrorists in the cave reacted, an automatic rifle, which had been stably in his hand, opened fire quickly and attacked them first. Under the fast and accurate fire attack of the two men, most of the remaining 10 terrorists in the cave were killed by the bullets from behind before they could turn around. The bare-headed leader with the fastest reaction only had time to turn around and raise his gun. Before he could aim at the enemy, he was hit by a bullet from the chest and fell to the ground. In a few seconds, a dozen terrorists in the cave were all exterminated. At that time, Ethan was really saved. With a long breath, Ethan looked excitedly at the two men who were armed to enter the cave. "Where's Tony Stark?" the steady man in the suit asked Ethan aloud, while the tall man on the side pointed his gun at Ethan. After all, he still had a rifle in his hand. If they were not keen to observe, they could see that he and the terrorists didn't seem to be together. Maybe he would be killed together with the terrorists lying on the ground now. However, necessary precautions are still necessary, and all targets that may pose a threat cannot be ignored. "He's in there. He's coming out. Are you here to save him?" Ethan said, throwing his rifle to the ground and holding his hands in front of him. Looking at their clothes and their powerful strength, it is clear that they are different from these mob terrorists. They are the elite with formal training, and the fierce gunfire is still ringing outside, which also shows that many of them are here this time, probably to save Tony. Agent Phil Coulson nodded to Ethan. "Yes, take us to him. We need to get out of here as soon as possible." Just now, when they rushed all the way, they found a large number of munitions and advanced missiles manufactured by Stark Industry on both sides of the valley. At this time, there is a fierce exchange of fire and bullets flying in disorder. Once these ammunition are hit and detonated, there will be a series of martyrdom explosions. With the number of these weapons, the power of the explosion will be very huge. At that time, they will also be injured in the explosion, even life-threatening. So they have to find Tony Stark as soon as possible, get him out and evacuate quickly. On the same day, shortly after Agent Phil Coulson and Chen Mo returned to their headquarters in Washington, they received the news that Tony Stark had been attacked and disappeared in Afghanistan. As soon as he learned of the situation, Chen Mo ordered to rush to Afghanistan for rescue. Nick Frey didn't block this. No matter Tony Stark's own strong weapon R&D ability, or the identity of Howard's son, one of the founders of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, Chen Mo's rescue operation had any problems. Once Tony Stark falls into the control of terrorists and is used by them, these terrorists will obtain a large number of powerful weapons and equipment with his strong weapons manufacturing talent. By then, they will bring even greater harm to the world. This is the work of the Bureau of Land Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics Support to eliminate the evil forces threatening the Earth's security and maintain world peace. So, on the day of Tony Stark's disappearance, Chen Mo arrived at Baghlan Air Force Base in Afghanistan and took over the command of Tony Stark's rescue operation. At the same time, the reconnaissance aircraft, satellite and ground search forces took the hit area as the center and launched a carpet search around. But the terrorists were obviously well prepared, and they were instructed to leave no trace along the way, completely disappeared in the sight of the military, and their hiding place was never found. A large number of search forces were mobilized, and the search scope continued to expand. Only a dozen days later, they finally found a terrorist base hidden among the mountains in a valley through careful satellite reconnaissance. Chen Mo didn't send out a large force to avoid the company's actions that would bring Tony Stark into danger. Dr. Ethan is going to take Phil Coulson and them back to the cave to find Tony Stark. A heavy mechanical movement suddenly comes out of the cave and gets closer to them. Phil Coulson quickly raised their weapons and pointed to the deep cave where the voice came from. They were all on guard, but Dr. Ethan on the other side was very happy. Seeing their actions, they quickly explained, "Don't worry, it's Tony." Ethan's explanation did not let the two relax. For the unknown situation, they would not slack off easily because of a single word. They relaxed their vigilance. They had to play a 12-point caution on the battlefield. At last, a large, thick and heavy figure with a round white light on his chest came out of the cave, revealing his true face in front of several people. This is a set of steel armor welded by heavy steel plates on the surface, which completely covers and protects the people inside. There are a large number of hydraulic mechanisms and track driving devices exposed in the joints of arms and legs. It is obvious that this is not only a set of steel armor for defense, but also has its own power. It looks more like a powerful robot. The rough welds and uneven appearance of steel armor indicate that it is made in extremely simple environment and conditions, but no one will think it is not a threat. The first time the steel armor appeared, Phil Coulson and his two men pointed their guns at him. Tony Stark, in the steel armor on the opposite side, was relieved to see that Ethan was okay. At the same time, he found that he had thrown away his rifle and held his hands in front of him, and the two men on the opposite side pointed to the muzzle of his gun. At that time, Tony kept walking in the armor-heavy bang, bang. In the sound, he strode straight towards the two men, obviously ready to shoot at them. When Phil Coulson and I saw each other, they also aimed their guns at Tony and were ready to fire. At the very beginning of the battle, Ethan, who was standing next to him, rushed to the middle of the two sides and separated them. "Tony, don't be impulsive. They are here to save you." Then Ethan turned to Phil Coulson and said, That's what you're looking for, Tony Stark." In Ethan's explanation, Tony finally stopped, and Phil Coulson put down their guns at the same time, but they did not completely relax their vigilance. "Who are you?" Tony Stark's voice was heard from under the steel mask. Phil Coulson's defense was slightly relaxed when he heard his voice. It was Tony Stark's voice. "Phil Coulson, agent of the Department of Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics, has been ordered to rescue you." "Then you're late. I don't need help now," Tony said, raising his arm with the flamethrower, and said with some teasing. He is confident that his #1 steel battle suit will enable him to escape from the terrorist base. He is not very grateful for their belated rescue. "What about you, man? You don't look like an agent." Tony Stark turned his head back to the tall figure in the black combat suit. Looking at Tony Stark's cold metal mask, the tall figure in his combat suit said slowly, "Block Romlo, Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, Special Team Leader." This powerful soldier who entered the cave with Phil Coulson to rescue Tony Stark is the former head of the Rapid Response Special Forces, Block Romlo, who also has an unknown name, Crossbone. After Chen, Mo took over the Rapid Response Special Forces and was reorganized into the Special Forces. He and Phil Coulson, who had just been recruited to the Special Forces, became Chen Mo's direct subordinate. The real identity he hid was the spy of the Hydra in the Bureau of Homeland Strategic Defense, Attack and Logistics Support. Now, of course, he didn't know Chen Mo's real identity, or, apart from a limited number of people in Norway's top-secret base, no one outside knows the identity of Chen Mo's Hydra master. At this time, though he was under Chen Mo, he did not know that Chen Mo was the supreme leader of their Hydra, the god that all Hydra members believed in. Chapter 147. Tony Stark couldn't help but pause when he heard the special team. He looked at Brock Romlo again, shook his head slightly, and then stepped away. In a sound of mechanical operation, Tony Stark walked through the middle of the three and toward the outside of the cave. Standing at the cave entrance, Tony Stark found that the terrorists outside had been basically wiped out, with only sporadic gunshots in the distance. Obviously, these terrorists were not the opponents who came to rescue his troops, and they would be wiped out immediately. Although I don't know how many armed forces there are in this terrorist base, Tony Stark alone has seen nearly 100 people before. However, so many terrorists who are fully armed and equipped with advanced weapons produced by Stark Industry have been eliminated so quickly by the rescue forces. "It seems that you sent out a large army to save me. Unfortunately, you are late. Please take Dr. Ethan out. I'll go first." The terrorists were all killed by the troops who came to rescue him, but the steel battle clothes they had made were useless, which made Tony Stark a little upset. However, in view of their saving Dr. Ethan, Tony was actually a little interested. Of course, with his proud character, he could not easily point a gun at these two soldiers' thanks for humanity, especially when he has made steel war clothes and has self-protection ability and does not need rescue. Tony Stark finished and activated an external switch on his arm. The position under the feet of the iron and steel war clothes immediately spurted two strong streams of flame air, which pushed the heavy iron war clothes to fly up quickly and towards the distance. Whoa! Tony Stark couldn't help shouting with excitement as he was flying at high speed in his steel suit. The feeling of flying at high speed is much better than driving a sports car. Although he didn't put into the battle and gave full play to the powerful fighting power of the steel battle suit, there was a sense of loss of saving all his strength to hit in the air. But this kind of flexible and high-speed flight ability also excited Tony Stark, who felt that his invention was still very powerful. In front of the cave, Phil Coulson and Brock Longlow looked at each other helplessly and felt speechless about Tony Stark's style of not playing according to the routine. Ethan on the other side saw that their faces were not very good looking and quickly asked, "There are more than 100 terrorists in this base. How many have you sent out this time?" Phil Coulson looks at Dr. Ethan. Three. Dr. Ethan wondered if he had heard the wrong thing. First he looked at Phil Coulson, then he turned to Brock Longlow. "There are 2 here. 3 minus 2 equals 1. That is to say, there is only 1 person outside." Seeing the 2 men nodding at the same time, it's clear that he didn't hear them wrong. Dr. Ethan couldn't help but feel a little confused. The fierce gunfire outside just now was a person fighting with hundreds of terrorists. And he won. Dr. Ethan said his imagination was limited, and he couldn't imagine what kind of scene it was. Even Tony's steel war suit couldn't kill hundreds of armed terrorists alone. In the movie, Tony Stark is also suppressed by machine guns. The transmission tracks of his legs are broken, and he successfully escapes from the terrorist base by flying function. As for those terrorists, most of them are killed by ammunition explosion, and many of them are alive, not completely wiped out. When Ethan was stunned, a tall and slender figure came in from outside the cave. He was dressed in the same black battle suit as Brock Longlow, but his exposed head, neck and hands were covered with black steel armor with only a pair of sharp eyes exposed. And Ethan noticed that there was a silver hilt behind his shoulder, a holster on both sides of his thigh, and 2 black pistols in the holster. "Commander." When Phil Coulson and Chen Mo came in, they both felt guilty. Tony Stark just left on his own. After the 3 arrived near the valley, Chen Mo made a battle plan ahead of time. He held many terrorists outside himself. The 2 of them rushed into Tony Stark's cave and rescued him. Now, Chen Mo successfully solves the terrorists outside, but they fail to complete their own tasks, only to save Dr. Ethan, who is also imprisoned by terrorists. As for Tony Stark, he flies away in his own steel armor. "I see it." Chen Mo's low voice came from under the steel mask. "What shall we do next?" Brock Longlow looked at Chen Mo and asked aloud. Their target Tony Stark has left in his steel suit, and their rescue seems meaningless. From the speed of the steel battle suit we saw just now, it is estimated that it will not take long to reach the base, and it should be back before them. "Call 2 helicopters." Chen Mo turned to order Agent Phil Coulson. Phil Coulson quickly contacted the base, and a few minutes later, 2 helicopters landed in an open area in the valley. "You 2 take him back to base. I'll get Tony Stark." With Chen Mo finished, he walked towards a plane. That idiot flew in the wrong direction. Tony Stark, flying happily in the sky in Mark I's steel battle suit, didn't find that he was flying in the wrong direction at all, and he was completely immersed in the thrill of flying. Until the propeller at the foot of the warsuit suddenly flamed out after a few muffled sounds, and the steel warsuit, which lost its power, began to fall to the ground rapidly. Tony Stark's original excited mood suddenly turned into a shock. After all, Mark I is a combination of simple equipment and raw materials. Its performance is not stable. As soon as the flight time is a little longer, the propeller will be directly scrapped. The original high-speed forward-flying steel battle suit lost its power in an instant, like a stone thrown by people, and fell obliquely towards the desert below. In Tony Stark's shrill scream, the steel battle suit fell rapidly from the air and plunged into the desert. The huge impact force made the originally weak steel battle suit disintegrate in an instant. Parts and steel plates were thrown everywhere, and Tony Stark was half immersed in the sand. Fortunately, when the propeller stalled, He didn't fly at a high altitude. Below it was just a desert which buffered a lot of impact. With the protection of the steel battle suit, Tony Stark, though looking very embarrassed, was miraculously unhurt. He survived the dangerous crash. It took a lot of effort for Tony Stark to climb out of the sand that completely buried his lower body. Looking around, he could see all the endless deserts. The rolling yellow sand dunes surrounded him completely. A deep sense of confusion and helplessness came to him. He didn't know what to do for a moment. Just after taking off, his mind was completely immersed in the pleasure of flying. He didn't pay attention to the direction of flying. He didn't know where it was or where Baglin Air Force Base was. He didn't even know the direction of returning to the terrorist base. The vast desert made him not know where to go, but it's obviously not the way to wait here. In the end, he can only choose one direction at will and start his journey out of the desert. In the desert, the temperature is very high during the day. Before long, Tony Stark's clothes are soaked with sweat, and sweat flows down his face and neck. The water loss caused by a lot of sweat makes him feel extremely thirsty, and his lips are becoming pale and dry. The top of the head of the sun will be a strong heat down. The sand under the feet of the strong, dazzling sun is hot. The air around the body is also hot and dry. The fierce sun shines on the body. Tony Stark feels that the skin is going to be burned. The brain is going to be roasted faint, as if it is going to be roasted. Even if he took off his shirt and wrapped it around his head and neck, it could not bring any relief, but the desire to survive made him go on. Just escaped from the hands of terrorists but lost in the boundless desert. It's more dangerous than the terrorist base before. There's no food and fresh water. In this extremely hot and harsh environment, he can't hold on for long. Seeing that he was going to die because of his self-esteem, Tony Stark was deeply regretted. He knew how good it was to leave with the troops who came to rescue him, and had to die. In his lethargy, I don't know how long he has gone, Tony Stark only feels that he is getting weaker and weaker. At the same time, he is very thirsty. The strong hunger comes from his stomach, and his throat seems to be dry. His body was exhausted by the continuous trek. Every step seemed to be exhausted. The whole man was exhausted and was about to reach the limit of his body. Just before he could hold on, a faint roar came from the sky behind him. Soon he saw a helicopter roaring from afar, flying over his head. Tony Starkly waved his arms to the helicopter. When he was relaxed, he could not hold on any longer. He knelt down in the yellow sand. Finally saved. The helicopter landed not far from Tony Stark. A tall, cold-faced young man in a black combat suit came down from the helicopter and walked towards Tony Stark, who fell to his knees. Looking up at the young man standing in front of him, Tony Stark reached out and grabbed his long, powerful hand. Then a strong force came and pulled him up from the ground. "Who are you?" Tony Stark asked weakly. Chenmo looks at Tony Stark, who is similar to Howard, with a grateful face and says positively, "I'm your father." At an Air Force base near New York, a military transport plane taxied on the runway of the airport for a while and then stopped slowly. Chapter 148. Next to the plane, waiting for the pickup, besides Tony Stark's assistant Pepper and the driver and bodyguard Hogan, there is also a beautiful teenage blonde girl. The hatch at the rear of the transporter slowly opened and lowered towards the ground. Tony Stark stepped down the slope with Dr. Ethan's help. Chenmo and Phil Coulson followed them. When they met that day, Chenmo almost let Tony Stark, who was already exhausted, rush up to him with his first words. "Although you saved me, you can't take advantage of me." As like as two peas, Tony Stark looked at Chen's face angrily, suddenly realized that Chen's appearance was exactly the same as that of a picture in his family. The identity of that man was his godfather, Special Commanding Officer Chenmo, unlike Steve, who once performed and publicized as a big star and made movies. Chenmo left few images. Although his later fame was not smaller than that of Steve, Captain of the United States, he left the world with more mysterious image wrapped in black steel armor and wearing sword shield. The picture of Tony Stark's house is one of the few pictures that Chen Mo left with his face exposed. Because of the long time, the near collapse of the body and the dizziness of the brain, Tony Stark did not recognize Chen Mo at the first time. As like as two peas, but the picture was taken 70 years ago, Chen Mu now seems to have almost nothing changed with the photo. Compared with the person who accepted the present for 70 years, Chen Mo is more willing to believe that this is a man who looks exactly alike. However, Chen Mo was his godfather, which was decided by the two in private at that time. Few people knew it at all. He didn't think that the man who saved him only claimed to be his father in order to take advantage of him. This complex situation makes Tony Stark's already dizzy head become a mess of paste, and the feeling of dizziness also intensifies. For a while, he couldn't think of a reason. Tony simply let go of his doubts and staggered to the helicopter with the help of the young man who claimed to be his father. After returning to Baglin Air Force Base, Tony Stark finally recovered after some rest and treatment. From Ethan's words, he learned that there were only 3 people who went to the terrorist base to rescue him that day. The special forces that he thought had wiped out all terrorists were Chen Mo alone. Those terrorists are equipped with the most advanced weapons in their Stark industry. Although the quality of their personnel is poor, they have the absolute advantage of hundreds of people plus advanced equipment and powerful firepower. It's impossible to imagine how to eliminate them all when a person is alone. He only heard of this kind of inhuman fighting power in his father Howard's mouth, and even the fighting style was so similar. When he was little, Howard told him the legend of his godfather, the commander of the Special Forces. He rushed into the Hydra base alone. Under the siege of hundreds of enemies, he was like a man without a man. He destroyed the well-equipped and powerful Hydra army with his own power. His single combat power was even higher than that of the whole Special Brigade. With such amazing power, as far as he knows, there is no one but Chen Mo, and even Steve Rogers, the Captain of the United States, is inferior. This made Tony Stark as like as 2 peas, and what Agent Phil Coulson told him later completely solved the doubts in his heart and made him completely accept Chen Mo's identity. It turns out that Chen Mo didn't die when he dropped into the sea, but was frozen in the ice. Not long ago, the Hydra super bomber was found by an investigation team. They later found the frozen Chen Mo inside and dug him out. The first place Chen Mo woke up was the Chinese martial arts school in Brooklyn, New York. Tony Stark knew that his father Howard had taken him there when he was a child and told him about how they fought together to destroy the 2 mafia families overnight. Until now, when he is free, he will also go to the martial arts school to sit and feel the place where his godfather and father used to be, practice martial arts with his uncle Wang Kun, and tease his little apprentice by the way. The Chinese generation is really interesting. He likes it very much. But now Wang Jin studies and practices hard in the martial arts school every day. He has made great progress in Kung Fu. Some of him are no longer rivals. In order to maintain the dignity of his elders, he has gone to less recently. He knew that the martial arts school was founded by Chen Mo, and Steve Rogers, the Captain of the United States, had followed Chen Mo to learn. It could be said that it was his home in the world, so he would go there as soon as he woke up. Hearing this, Tony Stark has basically confirmed Chen Mo's identity. When he heard that Chen Mo came to rescue him at the first time when he learned of his accident, he was even more moved. It's really nice to have a father, Tony Stark thought. There is no conflict in Tony's heart with the godfather, Chen Mo. Not to mention that he had already known that he had a powerful godfather, and he had a great admiration for him. He always hoped to see him with his own eyes. Chen Mo came to save him as soon as he knew that he had an accident, and appeared in time when he was about to collapse. Tony Stark recognized Chen Mo as the godfather. When he stepped off the transport plane, Tony Stark and Pepper, who was smiling at him with red eyes, looked at each other affectionately. The beautiful girl on one side saw that although Tony was in a bit of a mess, there was no secret sigh of relief afterwards. First, she looked at Chenmo several people curiously, and then she looked at the two people who were flirting with each other without any help. "Since you're okay, I'll go to class. I'll have dessert later. Don't worry about Pepper anymore." After a sermon, the little girl turned to a small beetle and left. Tony felt his nose uneasily and said to Chenmo, "This is Sharon, the orphan of my father's comrades in arms, entrusted to me for care. She was very good when she was a child, but she grew up more and more rebellious." Chenmo smiled and didn't speak. This should be Steve and Carter's daughter, Sharon Rogers. Of course, Tony didn't know her real identity. After all, Steve and his wife had passed away several decades ago. Although she was rebellious, Chenmo could see that she was still very concerned about Tony Stark, but she was not very good at expression and acted simply and directly, which was similar to Carter. "Pepper, this is my godfather. I told you that he saved me." Tony introduces Pepper to Chenmo. Of course, Pepper knows who Tony's godfather is, and she is one of the few people who knows the secret, but hasn't the legendary commander been missing for decades? Looking at the young Chenmo in front of him, Pepper opened his mouth in surprise. After leaving the airport, they went directly to the press conference. Just like in the movie, Tony Stark announced the closure of Stark's industrial weapons manufacturing department at the conference, which caused a storm. Chenmo did not block this. Then, Chenmo and Ethan follow Tony back to his seaside villa, while Agent Phil Coulson returns to the New York branch of Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support alone. Bullock Romlow did not follow them back. He was left in Afghanistan by Chenmo to wipe out the remaining terrorists. At the same time, Chenmo gave him a secret command through Hydra: secretly collect the wreckage of Mark I scattered in the desert, and the design drawings of Mark I left by Tony Stark in the cave. As a Hydra spy, Brock Romlow is not alone in the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. Many of his special fighters are Hydra members. He only needs 2 soldiers to kill the remaining terrorists, while he leads the Hydra members on secret missions. The design drawing is in the cave. On that day, Chenmo directly asked them to take Dr. Ethan back to the base, so no one moved it, and they got it easily. However, it took a lot of effort to collect the Mark I steel battle clothes scattered in the desert. Due to the rush of equipment, the connection between parts is not strong enough. In the process of losing power due to vibration, the steel battle jacket has the trend of disintegration. Many parts have fallen in this process, scattered within hundreds of meters. It took Brock Romlow nearly a day to collect Mark I. Then, according to the order of Hydra, Brock Romlow secretly contacted Obadiah Stane. For this cancer in Stark industry, Tony has always trusted his partner. Chenmo is not going to directly kill it. He is also an important part of the growth of Tony Stark. After his betrayal, Tony Stark really matures. He has some value for Chenmo, which is a good millstone. But these are all the later things. Back to the villa, Tony Stark soon began to build Mark II. For his godfather and savior, Tony Stark did not have any defense, and gave Chenmo and Dr. Ethan permission to enter the laboratory. Tony didn't hide the 2 men about the manufacture of steel war clothes, and Chenmo was able to witness the birth of steel war clothes and join in them. Tony Stark started making the Mark II steel suit in an underground lab. Chapter 149. When he revised and improved Mark I's drawing, Chenmo kept watching and put forward some suggestions by the way. Tony Stark remembers that his father Howard once said that Chenmo is not only a powerful fighter, but also a super genius. His strength in scientific research and biological science is very strong, even above Howard. It's just that he doesn't usually like to stay in the laboratory to do research, but spends more energy and time on fighting. but his talent and strength in science are still undoubted. Many of the top technologies that Stark Industry now masters were participated by Chen Mo at that time. Thinking of this, Tony Stark's eyes on Chen Mo are hot. It's a happy thing for a genius who is addicted to scientific research and development, but has few talents. Tony Stark immediately showed Chen Mo all his designs and ideas about Steel War clothes. He didn't need any precautions against Chen Mo. Chen Mo is his closest relative except his parents, and the only one he has left in the world. After a comprehensive understanding of Tony Stark's concept and design, Chen Mo also had to admire his talent, which is really a very talented design, far beyond this era. But now these are only preliminary designs, and there are still many shortcomings. Chen Mo points out many shortcomings and improvement directions easily according to his own vision and the plot in the movie, so that Tony Stark can hear his eyes shining and can't help nodding. Chen Mo had a strong R&D ability when he was with Howard, but 70 years later, many of the things he had are outdated. Fortunately, he has a strong R&D team behind him. In those days in the martial arts school, Chen Mo was not idle. He received a large number of Hydra's scientific and technological materials through a tablet computer. Although the time is limited and the amount of materials is too large, even his terrible learning ability cannot be fully mastered. But the various technologies related to the steel battle clothes or possibly used have been fully absorbed by him. So at this time, Chen Mo didn't have much pressure to develop a Steel War suit with Tony Stark, a scientific genius. After all, what he had to do was not to start from scratch and develop a set of Steel War suits independently. Tony Stark has completed the main technology and overall structure of the whole battle suit. All he has to do is modify and fill the rough skeleton to make it fuller, more perfect, and more powerful. In consideration of the poor air pressure and temperature conditions in high-altitude flight, the tightness of the battle suit, the ability of internal pressure regulation, and the ability of anti-icing at high altitude have been deliberately strengthened. The shell is made of titanium alloy, which is used by the Cheryl military satellite. The excellent metal performance and density can not only guarantee the performance of the steel battle suit, but also maintain the power-weight ratio. The power of leg thruster and flight stabilizer has been optimized, and the propulsion efficiency is much higher than the original. In addition, under Chen Mo's suggestion, the war clothes also added air filtration and anti-toxic gas function, an underwater oxygen supply device, so that the war clothes can adapt to more complex and harsh environment. Although Tony Stark has completed the main design of the steel battle suit, many details in it need to be improved gradually, and even many problems need to be found and modified slowly in use. However, Chen Mo's advice has saved him a lot of detours, saved a lot of time, and avoided many accidents. In his mind, Tony Stark could not help but look up to Chen Mo when he thought of improving the Steel War clothes he made according to Chen Mo's suggestion. Worthy of my godfather, it's good to have a father. Dr. Ethan, who was also an outstanding scientist, was reduced to an assistant or an intern completely in front of the two geniuses of Chen Mo and Tony Stark. There was still a huge gap between him and Chen Mo and Stark. He didn't understand much about what Chen Mo discussed. However, Ethan was not depressed at all. Instead, he was very happy. He felt that this was a good learning opportunity. While assisting them in their research and development, he was eager to learn from them various advanced theories and knowledge, and constantly improved himself. This day, 3 people are testing the newly improved flight stabilizer in the underground laboratory. Pepper, carrying 3 cups of coffee, opens the password door and enters. Tony, Obadiah is here waiting for you. Looking at the 3 busy people, Pepper reluctantly put down his coffee and said to Tony, "Okay, I'll go up right away." Tony agreed as he looked down and lived. One side of the Chen Mo smells speech. Corner of the mouth cannot help but arouse a smile, weasel to New Year. After testing the effect of the flight stabilizer, Tony said hello to the two and went upstairs. After a while, he came down with a box of pizza. Looking at Tony's face, I knew that the conversation was not pleasant. As in the movie, Tony was banned by the board of directors for suffering from PTSD and stopped his work in management of the company. Then Obadiah persuaded Tony to take the mini arc reactor back to the company for engineers to study and put it into mass production. With the huge benefits, the board of directors changed its decision, but Tony firmly rejected it. Of course, all of this is Obadiah's self-directing and self-acting drama. The purpose is to kick Tony out of the game, take control of Stark Industry, and acquire the latest technology Tony has mastered. Although Tony Stark is a little angry, it is obvious that the development of steel war clothes is much more important in his mind now. He has left the company's business aside and once again devoted himself to the manufacturing of steel war clothes. Soon, with the joint efforts of two talents and an outstanding scientist, the first formal steel battle suit, Mark II, was finally born, and Tony Stark could not wait to stand on the equipment platform and start dressing. A mechanical arm stretches out from around the platform, splices the components of the steel battle suit to Tony, connects and fixes them together, and a piece of silver steel components gradually wraps Tony up and finally becomes a steel warrior with clear edges and corners, full of science fiction beauty and mechanical power. Jarvis. Tony calls up the War Clothes Assistant Operating System transplanted from the Villa Intelligent Management System. At your service, sir. The voice of artificial intelligence Jarvis rings in Tony's ear. Start the head display device. Received. Import all selected programs. Yes, sir. With Tony's instructions sent out, a virtual light screen appeared in his vision. Without affecting his vision, he projected all kinds of external information, such as map, altitude and the performance, energy value and other states in front of him. And the target that his eyes are fixed on will also be analyzed automatically, and relevant data will be listed, which can play a great auxiliary role in the battle. Upload finished, sir. We are ready. Good. Let's start the simulation run. Reset the priority and correct the working conditions. Check the control surfaces. Looking at the war clothes on the virtual screen, Tony ordered. Yes, sir. Next, the armor around the whole set of steel battle clothes began to move one by one. Silver steel armor moved in turn like transformers, unfolded and finally recovered. Test complete, ready to turn off power and start data analysis. A few minutes later, after all the tests, Tony Stark can't wait to start the thruster at his feet. The steel battle suit rises slowly, and the flight stabilizer on the palm of his hands emits white flames to help him adjust his posture and maintain balance. After a few attempts, Tony stood firm in the air and was suspended steadily at a height of more than 1 meter from the ground. I'm going out for a good flight to test the flight performance. The problem of high-altitude icing has been solved in advance, but Chen Mo doesn't worry about his safety, so he doesn't stop it. I don't have the ability to fly and survive in outer space. Please take it easy. Chen Mo is really afraid that he will fly all the way to the high altitude. Although he is not afraid of freezing, they haven't solved the problems of vacuum and radiation. It's not diving, it's not simply sealing. I see, Dad, Tony Stark agreed excitedly. Then he fell forward. The thruster and palm flight stabilizer under his feet increased the output power at the same time and accelerated out along the arc channel leading to the outside of the garage. Chen Mo and Dr. Ethan went back to the computer to check the real-time images and data sent back by the war clothes. Different from the last short flight in Afghanistan, the brand new Mark II is much better than Mark I in terms of power, control, endurance, and comfort. It is very easy to operate. Tony is flying freely in the air and shouting excitedly. Great! It's like a dream. Through the computer screen, Chenmo can see that with Tony's vision moving, the helmet automatically magnifies the image on a Ferris wheel in the distance that he is looking at, and can clearly see the people in the pod, with extremely powerful auxiliary functions. Well, let's see the ability of this steel war suit, Tony said excitedly, then turned around and flew straight up to the sky. What is the record for SR-71? SR-71 altitude record is 85,000 feet, sir. The record is for braking. Come on. Under Tony's control, Mark II's leg thrusters are fully powered and hurtling towards the sky. Chapter 150. Soon Tony reached an altitude of 85,000 feet, the highest flight altitude record set by the SR-71 Blackbird high-speed strategic reconnaissance aircraft. But Tony did not stop at this point, but continued to fly to a higher altitude. When Mark II reached the height of 150,000 feet, seeing that Tony still didn't stop, Chenmo couldn't help turning his white eyes and yelling sternly in the communicator. Tony Stark, who was immersed in the excitement beyond the limit, heard Chenmo's harsh voice in his ear and then came back to his mind. At the same time, he remembered Chenmo's advice before he left. Okay, I see, Dad, Tony reluctantly agreed. Seeing that there is no cloud and dust cover above the eyes, in the dark and pure sky dotted with bright stars, Tony reluctantly stops to climb, and then slowly slows down under the effect of gravity, and finally starts to fall down. This starts the propeller again, turns the direction to dive down. Mark II's test flight is perfect. Its performance is far beyond Tony Stark's expectation. It can be said that it is completely mature and does not need to be modified. What he originally expected was to carry out multiple modifications, tests, or even major modifications, and to manufacture several sets of battle suits successively so as to finally meet the actual requirements. But now, it's easy to fix it at one time so that he can't pick out any problems with satisfaction. He knows that all this is Chenmo's credit. His joining and guidance not only saves him a lot of detours, saves a lot of time and energy, but also greatly improves all aspects of performance under the reinforcement of a number of high-end technologies provided by him. It may take him enough time to solve those problems, but Chenmo's technology is not the propeller that he can study in a short time, especially for the warsuit, which provides power for flight. Chenmo's energy engine, whether its energy conversion efficiency or push-to-weight ratio, is much better than his original engine. The most direct benefit is that Mark II's extreme speed is as high as Mach 2, more than 2,400 kilometers per hour, and Mark III, which is put into the actual battle in the film, has just been able to break through the speed of sound. Tony Stark is very satisfied with the suit, but Chenmo is not. With Chenmo's forward-looking suggestions and the enhancement of Hydra technology, the new Mark II is much stronger than the modified Mark III in the movie, but there are still two big problems. One is that it is too cumbersome to equip the steel battle clothes. It is necessary to use a special equipment platform, and many fully automatic robotic arms are assembled at the same time. It still takes a long time, which greatly reduces its ability to cope with emergencies. If the enemy hits the door, can't you expect them to stop and wait for you to finish wearing your war clothes before attacking? In the Avenger Alliance, Mark VII's kind of automatic flying in, the laser-guided tracking rapid deployment system that directly carries out package dressing from the back, or Mark 42's split automatic assembly in Iron and Steel Man 3rd Middle School is much faster and more convenient, no longer need to be restricted by the heavy assembly platform, and can be dressed quickly anywhere. In addition, with the help of Chenmo, the performance of Mark II has improved a lot, but it is far from reaching the limit. Due to the lack of output power of the second-generation arc reactor, the performance of Mark II in terms of flight speed and attack power has not been fully developed. Although he is quite satisfied with the current Mark II, under the temptation of Chen Mo's more powerful battle suit, Tony has no hesitation in choosing to continue to strengthen the battle suit. Next, the two began to study the third-generation arc reactor with more powerful output power and improve the way of dressing up. The second generation of arc reactor is the same as the first generation of palladium metal embedded, which needs to be discarded and replaced. The third generation of the movie uses palladium metal plate, which can be replaced directly after use. It is more convenient to use, has higher energy output efficiency, and longer endurance. While they continued to improve the steel battle suit, Chen Mo received a message from Hydra. Obadiah Stein has successfully obtained the Mark I prototype and its design drawings. However, there was a small episode in the middle. As Chen Mo expected, Obadiah didn't intend to deal honestly but to eat black. Unfortunately, he chose the wrong person. Brock Romlow is not the original bareheaded leader, and his subordinates are not the mob terrorists. When Obadiah stealthily took out the nerve paralysis device and approached Brock Romlow to plot against him, he was easily subdued by the vigilant Brock. In normal times, he would kill Obadiah directly, but the task assigned by Hydra had to be completed, so Obadiah survived fortunately. But as a punishment, Brock Romlow cut off his left hand with a nerve paralysis device. When Obadiah, who paid double the price in one left hand, saved his life and got what he wanted, walked out of the tent with a ferocious face and was ready to call his men to avenge him. However, he found that many elite bodyguards who were left outside and should have taken control of the situation were all lying on the ground. The curtain of the tent was lifted again, and Brock Romlow, who had come out behind him, saw it. He couldn't help but smile sarcastically from the corner of his mouth. It seems that you have to carry them back by yourself. When Chen Mo and Tony Stark successfully improved the arc reactor and created a third-generation arc reactor with palladium metal plate, which can be easily replaced directly. At the same time, the third-generation arc reactor with stronger energy output and endurance capability was also built. Obadiah also returned to New York from Afghanistan with Mark I under the help of his other staff. As early as Tony Stark had just returned and announced the dissolution of Stark's industrial weapons manufacturing department at a press conference, Obadiah, the CEO of Stark Industries, took the opportunity of a sharp drop in the stock price to persuade the board of directors to restrict Tony Stark's rights, making him a shadow in Stark Industries. It took a huge price to get the prototype of the steel war suit. Before Obadiah could go to the hospital to deal with his broken hand after returning to Stark Industry, he could not wait to order to call up scientific researchers to study the drawings and the prototype. With the ready-made drawings and the prototype of Mark I, the research on the steel war suit is very smooth. The steel war suit code named Iron Overlord was designed and manufactured soon, but the energy problem to drive the steel war suit has never been solved. His research team has been studying the large arc reactor in Stark's industry for a long time. It has been a long time since he wanted to build a miniaturized arc reactor like Tony Stark's, but there has been no progress. Obadiah couldn't help but look at Tony Stark again. Because Chen and Mo killed all the terrorists who kidnapped Tony at the beginning, and left the crossbone Brock Romlow and his team to wipe out the remaining terrorists nearby. The plot of terrorist attack on Ethan's hometown did not happen later in the film. Tony has also been addicted to the development of new steel battle clothes and has no idea of the company's affairs. So Tony knew nothing about Obadiah's actions in Stark Industry, but Chen Mo knows Obadiah Stein's actions very well. It's time for Tony to know what he really is. That night, Agent Phil Coulson came to Tony Stark's seaside villa and brought photos of Stark Industries selling weapons to terrorists and rebels, including even the latest Jericho missiles. When was this taken? After looking at the picture, Tony Stark asked with a serious face. Yesterday, Phil Coulson replied calmly. I have not approved any transactions. Tony Stark shook his head and said with some uncertainty, but your company approved it. Coulson looked at Tony and said slowly. When Tony Stark heard this, he couldn't help but think of the fact that he was restricted by the board of directors and stopped working. He said angrily, I'm different from my company. Agent Phil Coulson took a look at Tony Stark, didn't speak anymore, left the information and left. Tony Stark looked at his back and fell into deep thought. There was only one person in Stark Industry who could do all this except him. Obadiah's face could not help but come to his mind. Now the company is under his control. It must have something to do with him. Thinking of this, Tony Stark calmly dials Obadiah. The conversation was not pleasant. I saw Tony found out his behind-the-scenes business and questioned him. While dealing with Obadiah's anger at the hospital, I simply admitted that he applied to the board of directors to stop Tony's work. Now Tony Stark has been elevated by him. He has completely lost the right to work in Stark Industry, which has become no threat to him. Now he has got the powerful weapon of steel battle suit, and he doesn't need to pretend to be a kind elder in front of Tony at all. When he hung up, Tony Stark looked a bit confused. He had always treated Obadiah as a relative before, but in the end, he designed himself and seized his power in the company. This feeling of betrayal by close people made him extremely uncomfortable. Tony never thought of Obadiah's betrayal. Chapter 151. Looking back on his father Howard's death, Obadiah and he took charge of Stark Industry together. Tony felt a chill in his heart. In the difficult period of the company, Obadiah persuaded him to sell a part of the shares, which led to the current board of directors, the subsequent listing of the company's structure and department, personnel adjustment, and many other things, in fact, are deliberately weakening his rights in the company. Now, Obadiah finally kicked him out of the company and took control of Stark Industries alone. Originally, if Obadiah could manage the company according to his idea, Tony would not mind being an offhand manager, but he sold weapons to terrorists for the sake of profit. It is absolutely unacceptable for Tony Stark that his own weapons fall into the wrong hands and are used to harm innocent civilians, so he decided to take them all back. While Chenmo was not in the lab, Tony frostily stepped on the automatic dressing platform, equipped with Mark II steel battle clothes, and flew to several places marked by Phil Coulson as the location of terrorists and anti-government forces. After Tony flew away from the passage, Chen came down the stairs slowly. Jarvis, show the real-time image and location of Mark II and the status information. Chenmo orders to Intelligent Housekeeper Jarvis. Yes, sir. Tony gave Chenmo the same supreme authority, so Jarvis directly executed Chenmo's order. The display on one side then lights up, showing a satellite map. Mark II's position is clearly marked on it, and he is moving at a high speed. At this time, he is crossing the Atlantic Ocean, heading for the east at a high speed. On one side of the screen, it shows Tony's real-time image, Mark II's flight speed, altitude, battle clothes status, and other information. A few hours later, Tony crossed the Atlantic Ocean and reached the target area. With a strong steel battle suit, Tony easily found the weapons produced by Stark Industries sold by Obadiah secretly and destroyed them all. The terrorists' counterattack did not have any lethality in front of the steel battle suit. All kinds of bullets were directly shot on the battle suit. Even the shells of the tank could not pose a threat to Mark II. No one could prevent Tony Stark from cleaning up. After visiting several places in the intelligence and destroying all the weapons, Tony finally felt a little less depressed. After confirming that there was no omission, Mark II rose up in the strong fire of a large number of ammunition explosions and flew towards the coming direction at a high speed. On his way back, however, Tony was intercepted by U.S. Air Force warplanes. When Chen Mo found two F-22 fighters on the screen, he immediately called Agent Phil Coulson. Soon, a call was received from Edwards Air Force Base Flight Command. After the commander answered, the stern look on his face relaxed. Put down the phone, he turned to the crowd and said loudly, "Clear the alarm. It's the Secret Service that is carrying out the task of recalling the fighters." The title of Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau is still very useful, which is also the reason why Chen Mo wants to obtain this identity. But Tony Stark obviously didn't know that. He thought that he was able to get rid of them with more powerful performance and higher speed than F-22, and quietly returned to the villa in a happy mood. Tony didn't stop there. His company is still in the control of Obadiah. Even though he has destroyed the weapons sold, he will continue to sell the weapons produced by Stark Industry to others. He must completely overthrow him and end all this. He had made a mistake before, regardless of the consequences, and only knew to make powerful weapons according to his interests. Let Obadiah use them and do so many bad things. Now, he must not let this mistake go on. So when he got back to the villa, Tony asked Pepper to come back to his office for him. He used the equipment he provided to hack into the company's mainframe and help him copy all the company's delivery lists as evidence of Obadiah's behind-the-scenes arms trade. Because he has now been stopped by the board of directors and cannot enter the company, this task can only be completed by Pepper. As Tony's most trusted and close person, Pepper came back to the company without hesitation to help him make up for his mistakes after knowing his ideas. And when Pepper successfully hacked into the company's mainframe, he not only found evidence that Obadiah sold arms to terrorists, but also found a bigger secret. It turns out that Obadiah was behind the kidnapping of Tony Stark when he demonstrated the Jericho missile in Afghanistan, and his original request was to let the terrorists kill Tony directly, so as to clear the way for him to master the whole company. But what he didn't expect was that the terrorists found out the real identity of Tony Stark, didn't kill him, and let Dr. Ethan, who had been caught by them before, save Tony, who was seriously injured, and let him make weapons for them. Obadiah got the design drawing of Mark I and set up the 16th District to study the steel battle clothes. After copying all the evidence into the U-disk, Pepper was about to shut down and leave. However, she was told that she came to the company and entered Tony's office. Obadiah, who was suspicious, came to block it. Pepper can't help being flustered. Obadiah happened to come at this time, apparently doubting her arrival. But through the information she just saw, Obadiah is obviously not a man or a woman. Once she found that she copied his criminal evidence, she would not be allowed to leave safely. "What are you doing on Tony's computer?" Obadiah came straight to Pepper with a calm face, obviously intending to check directly, and the atmosphere became tense for a while. Just as Pepper was panicking about how to get out of the office, the door of the office was pushed open again, and Agent Phil Coulson, with a serious face, strode in. "Miss Potts, the commander sent me to pick you up." The two men at their desks, who were in a tense confrontation, turned their heads at the same time. When Pepper saw Agent Phil Coulson, he was relieved that Obadiah should not dare to act rashly, let alone be a senior agent. Only then did she remember that Chen Mo, Tony's legendary godfather, was a senior member of a special organization. Although he didn't know much about that organization, Chen Mo was able to rush to Afghanistan at the first time of the incident, take over the command of the rescue operation from the military side, and finally successfully rescued Tony and returned to New York by military plane. From this series of things, we can see that Chen Mo and his organization, i.e. Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, it must be very powerful. Obadiah felt the opposite, and Phil Coulson's sudden appearance annoyed him. After Tony was rescued by Chen Mo, he investigated the details of the mysterious figure, including the man who had been following him, Phil Coulson, who appeared in front of him at that time. He launched all the forces he could mobilize, but in the end he did not find any results. He only knew that they came from a mysterious organization called Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. As for the details of this organization, no one disclosed to him. The only advice he got was not to provoke them. Obviously, this mysterious organization is no less than the FBI and CIA, and even more powerful. Looking at Phil Coulson, who has a serious face and sharp eyes, Obadiah knows that she can't keep Pepper, so she has to get up and let her go. Unwilling to see Pepper walk out of the office under the escort of Agent Phil Coulson, Obadiah takes back his eyes and sits in front of the computer. After a review, it soon found that the company's internal mainframe, many encrypted important documents have been accessed and copied, including his behind-the-scenes transactions with terrorists, as well as the evidence that he directed terrorists to attack and kill Tony Stark. Obadiah knew that his work had been completely exposed. In this case, he simply planned to break the boat and forget that he still had a trump card in his hand. The Iron Overlord based on Markai has been built, but the energy aspect has not yet been solved. Obadiah, eager to put Iron Overlord into use, rushed to the large-scale original arc reactor of Stark Industry. His engineers, after a long time of research on the large-scale original arc reactor, unfortunately, they have never achieved anything. They think that the miniaturization of the arc reactor is impossible. Obadiah heard the strange anger and growled at the director, Dr. William. "Do you know what Tony Stark made in the cave? A pile of broken parts." In the face of Obadiah's rampage, Dr. William whispered, "I'm sorry, I'm not Tony Stark." The evidence of his crime has been obtained by Pepper, and he may soon take action against him. He must take risks and put the Iron Overlord into use immediately. As long as Pepper and Tony Stark are killed, no one can threaten him anymore. Since his men couldn't make a miniature arc reactor, they had to take it from someone else. Obadiah, who was already crazy, came to Tony Stark's seaside villa again, paralyzed him with a nerve paralyzer, and took the second-generation arc reactor from his chest. Obadiah, who thought Tony was going to die, no longer disguised himself and admitted what he had been doing. After taking down the arc reactor on Tony Stark's chest, Obadiah thought that Tony was bound to die, so he no longer covered himself up and admitted what he had been doing. Chapter 152. In Afghanistan, he ordered the terrorists to kill Tony Stark, and he always regarded Tony as a tool to make money, using his talent in weapons manufacturing to make money for him. Only then did Tony Stark fully recognize Obadiah's true face and deeply regret his previous innocence and ignorance. Before leaving, Obadiah proudly told Tony that he had made a stronger steel suit, and that the mini-arc reactor would be the core of this powerful new generation of weapons, helping him control the world. And after Tony, he was about to start with Pepper, which made Tony Stark worried, but he couldn't help it. Without the energy supply of the arc reactor, the electromagnet in the chest could not continue to absorb the shrapnel in the chest, and they began to move along with the blood slowly to the writing heart. Tony Stark looked extremely painful and weak. But because of the function of the nerve paralysis device, he could not move at all. He could only sit on the sofa and feel the constant approach of death, and could not stop Obadiah at all. After Obadiah left the villa with the second-generation arc reactor, Chen Mo walked out of the underground laboratory slowly, holding a third-generation arc reactor just made. Tony's originally desperate eyes became excited at the moment when he saw Chen Mo after Chen Mo installed a new reactor for him. The electromagnet worked again and absorbed the shrapnel moving towards the heart. At last, he relieved the threat of life, and his face gradually improved. Chenmo then called Agent Phil Coulson to take Pepper to a safe place and immediately sent people to evacuate people near the Stark industry. Obadiah's evidence of private arms trade and terrorist killing of Tony Stark has been obtained by Pepper. He is sure to jump to the wall. A war is inevitable. With the power of steel battle clothes, nearby civilians are vulnerable. Phil Coulson, who received Chenmo's order, ignored Pepper's request to call in people to arrest Obadiah and took her to the New York branch of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. It was heavily guarded and had underground bunkers, and even Obadiah in his steel suit could not hurt Pepper. Tony was relieved to make sure the Pepper was not in danger. When the effect of the nerve palsy was over, Tony Stark, who had recovered completely, immediately stepped on the equipment platform with murderous face and put on the steel battle suit. Obadiah got the mini arc reactor, so the steel battle suit he made had energy. Although I don't know what kind of battle suit he made, since he can instruct terrorists to attack himself and claim to make a bigger steel battle suit, he must have got the Mark I design drawing he left in the base, maybe even including a prototype plane that crashed in the desert. Obadiah now has full control of Stark Industry. With the strength of the company, with drawings and prototypes, it is not difficult to make a more powerful steel battle suit than Mark I. The only way to trap him is to drive the energy of the steel war suit. Now that Tony has got the second-generation arc reactor, his steel war suit has power. Based on Tony Stark's understanding of steel battle suit and Stark's industrial research ability, even if Obadiah's steel battle suit was not made by him, but by Stark's engineers who improved on the basis of Mark I, its destructive ability must be extremely amazing. He must be stopped in time. Tony does not allow the things he creates to be taken by others to do evil and hurt the innocent. Chenmo didn't stop him. A strong fighter must go through the battle. To become a superhero, Tony must go through countless battles later. Obadiah is a good practice object. Moreover, those who betrayed him asked him to solve it by himself. While they've been working on a new third-generation arc reactor and a quick suit system, Tony hasn't left Mark II completely idle. Tony, who was very satisfied with the armor, took the time to refit it, added the weapon system, and painted the whole body. Like in the movie, he adopted the golden red 2 color painting similar to his collection of an old car, warm, eye-catching, and handsome. After being equipped on the dressing platform, Tony Stark nodded to Chenmo and Ethan on the other side, and started the propeller directly to accelerate and leave the passage. After Tony left, Chenmo quickly put on his Edelman armor combat suit, opened the door of a sports car parked in the garage and sat in. Ethan rushed to the other side to get on. "You're going too? Take me." Hearing this, Chenmo can't help thinking of the picture of Dr. Ethan holding a rifle and roaring to drive away several terrorists in the cave in order to buy time for Tony in the movie. It has to be said that Dr. Ethan, who is usually gentle, doesn't want to die and even afraid of terrorists. But now it's obviously not going to take him to fight. "Ethan, you stay here. There is a very difficult task for you to accomplish." When Dr. Ethan heard this, he stopped immediately and looked at Chenmo firmly, with a firm expression of generosity to death. "Don't worry, give it to me." "What task?" Chenmo stepped on the accelerator and the car sped forward towards the passage in the low and loud roar of the engine. Chenmo's voice came from the car. "Give me directions. I don't know the way." Although under the guidance of Ethan's version of artificial voice navigation system, Chenmo drove the sports car to the fastest speed and passion, but it was not as fast as Tony Stark's steel battle suit. By the time he got to Stark Industries, Tony had been fighting with a bigger steel armor for a long time, and the surrounding buildings had been demolished by the battle of the two men. Thanks to the fact that this is the park of Stark Industry, Employees have come home from work, and the civilians within a few kilometers around have been evacuated and cordoned off. Therefore, apart from destroying a large number of buildings, the battle between the two did not cause civilian casualties. However, their fight was too fierce. From the factory to the road, their momentum was amazing. They were still seen by many people who were curious to watch in the distance. Obadiah's Iron Overlord is obviously rougher and much behind Mark II, but its huge size makes it have enough space to install more powerful power devices, so it is much stronger than Tony's Mark II in terms of strength alone, and its heavy armor makes it difficult for Tony to break through its defense. So when Chen Mo arrived, he saw Tony being beaten by Obadiah. He could only rely on Mark II's greater flexibility and speed to compete with Iron Overlord. There have been many scars on the surface of the battle suit. Obviously, it has been attacked a lot. Fortunately, Mark II's gold titanium alloy enhanced composite defense armor is strong enough, which has not been directly disassembled. Stark Industry is an arms manufacturing enterprise, so there is no lack of weapons. Iron Overlord's huge size can also carry more and more powerful weapons, but the engineers who made Iron Overlord didn't have Tony Stark's talent. They hid all the weapons inside the battle clothes. Most of these weapons were directly attached to Iron Overlord. Unlike in the movie, Obadiah's left hand was cut off by Brock Longlow, so the Iron Overlord's left hand was changed into a heavy hammer, which can produce a strong impact to blow the enemy away. When Tony was pounded out again with the impact hammer and was trapped in a pile of twisted steel pipe racks for a while, the armor behind the Iron Overlord slowly opened, and a heavy missile with a length of more than 1 meter was extended. After locking Tony was fired at him. This is the most powerful weapon equipped by Iron Overlord, and also the only one hidden inside the battle suit. It is powerful enough to kill a tank directly. If Mark II is directly hit, it will also suffer a lot of damage. Fortunately, when the missile came, Tony got out of the twisted steel in time to avoid the missile's frontal attack, but he was still hit by the huge impact of the missile explosion and flew into the air. During the air roll, Tony directly activated the thruster at his feet and the flight stabilizer of his hands, floating steadily in the mid-air, and Obadiah could not catch him at all. Wow, it's amazing. Have you upgraded your armor? Obadiah's arrogant voice came from the Iron Overlord and praised Mark II. What a coincidence. I've also made some improvements. After Obadiah finished speaking, Iron Overlord's legs began to deform, stretching out 2 thick thruster jet pipes, and then the thruster ignited and started, spewing out a strong flame air flow, pushing Iron Overlord to fly upward. Although Iron Overlord's propeller obviously lags far behind Mark II's, the huge model makes up for the deficiency to some extent, and makes the heavy Iron Overlord have the ability to fly. Seeing Obadiah controlling the Iron Overlord to fly to himself, Tony quickly increased the power of the propeller and flew to the high altitude. Obadiah, who was determined to kill Tony, also turned the thruster power to the maximum, and the fierce flame came out with the rolling smoke. The huge Iron Overlord dragged 2 thick columns of smoke under his feet and chased Tony to the sky. At the moment when the Iron Overlord was in the air, Tony couldn't help thinking that when Mark II was flying to 150,000 feet, he was severely stopped by Chen Mo. At the time of Mark II's test flight, when he reached 150,000 feet, he was severely drunk by Chen Mo. Chapter 153. Although Mark II didn't freeze at the altitude beyond the flight limit, it doesn't mean that Obadiah's Iron Overlord is safe. As you know, Mark II has been improved and strengthened by Chen Mo's advice for many times, and the gap between Mark I and Mark II can hardly be measured. But Obadiah, based on Mark I, made Iron Overlord in such a short period of time. Except for its huge size, strength, and defense advantages, The comprehensive performance of other aspects can't match Mark II at all, especially in some places that Tony didn't find himself, such as the high-altitude ice problem. Think about it and do it. Tony deliberately keeps a distance from Obadiah by virtue of his speed advantage and leads him to the sky. Although the thruster of Iron Overlord is huge, and the flame is much bigger and more spectacular than Tony's Mark II, due to the huge gap in technology, in fact, the propulsion force is far less than the smaller energy engine equipped by Mark II. In addition to the heavy weight of Iron Overlord, its flying speed is not fast in fact. Tony suppresses the speed and keeps the distance almost within reach. Obadiah, who is red-eyed and wants to kill Tony, recklessly follows him to the sky. Although they suppress their speed, the two quickly reach tens of thousands of feet. Seeing that he was about to catch up with Tony, Obadiah laughed excitedly. "Tony, your design is great. Unfortunately, my war suit is more advanced." Indeed, from the performance of the two men since the fight, Tony's Mark II has been completely suppressed. Mark II's own strength is not comparable to the Iron Overlord's huge size, and he is equipped with few weapons, and there is no heavy weapons, which is not a threat to some Iron Overlords with heavy armor. But Obadiah, who was after Tony, did not find that the armor surface of Iron Overlord had begun to freeze, and as they flew higher and higher, the ice on the surface was rapidly thickening. Then how do you deal with the ice problem? Tony looked back at the thick ice on the Iron Overlord and replied, "Ice problem." Obadiah didn't quite understand. After all, he was just a businessman and didn't know much about technology. At this time, their altitude has not reached the 85,000 feet of SR-71 Blackbird high-speed strategic reconnaissance aircraft, but has exceeded the flight limit of ordinary aircraft. As soon as Obadiah's voice fell, the Iron Overlord's propeller stopped working after a series of muffled sounds. The operation system of the warsuit also crashed in this extremely low temperature condition. The whole set of warsuit lost its power completely and fell downward. Tony was relieved and stopped. He thought the suit was perfect. Unexpectedly, there were many problems in the actual battle. Thanks to Chen Mo's improvement of Mark II, he could not defeat Obadiah this time. It seems that the steel suit still needs to be upgraded. Looking down at the Iron Overlord, who is accelerating to fall in a complicated mood, until it is almost out of sight, Tony controls Mark II to fly to the ground and returns to the place where they just fought, Stark Industrial Park. Just now, he was exhausted from a fierce battle. What he wanted to do was to take off his armor and have a good rest. Just as he opened his helmet to take a breath, the Iron Overlord, who was supposed to have crashed, suddenly fell behind him. Before he could react, he used his strong right mechanical arm to hold Mark II firmly. In the past, the high altitude and low temperature made the Iron Overlord's surface coagulate a thick layer of ice, and the internal control system also crashed in the low temperature. But Tony ignored the Iron Overlord's huge volume and the thickness of his armor. Although it was frozen at first and fell to the ground, the actual situation was not so bad. The temperature inside the battle suit just exceeded the lower limit of the control system, but in the process of falling, the temperature of the environment keeps rising. The fast-falling battle suit and air rub violently, which also produce a lot of heat. The ice layer on the surface falls off under the impact of rolling and air flow, and the internal temperature also rises rapidly. Before falling to the ground, the control system was finally restarted, and the thruster was back to work, so that the Iron Overlord landed safely on the ground. Then Obadiah, who had nearly died in a fall, hid and waited for Tony Stark to land. At the moment when Tony thought he was dead and relaxed his vigilance, Obadiah suddenly flew out of the hiding place and fell behind Tony. Before he reacts, he grabs him with strength and holds him to his chest. At the same time, he raises his left hand with a huge impact hammer and hammers him heavily towards the head of Mark II. When Tony found that he was strangled, he quickly closed the battle suit mask and struggled hard at the same time. Unfortunately, compared with the Iron Overlord, who was several times larger than him, his strength was still insufficient. Seeing that he could not open the struggle, Tony had to bite his teeth and fight hard. The heavy impact hammer hit Mark II heavily on the head, and the huge impact force shook the whole battle clothes. Obadiah and Iron Overlord could feel the huge vibration from the battle clothes, and the part directly under the attack was slightly deformed. A fierce smile appeared on Obadiah's face. Today, he is going to completely remove Tony Stark, the biggest obstacle to his complete mastery of Stark industry. Thanks to Mark II's strong defense, Tony Stark in the war suit felt that his whole head was shaken a lot. He was dizzy, but he didn't get any real damage. In the movie, Tony Stark, wearing Mark III, was hit by a tank shell and fell down directly from a high altitude, smashing the ground into a big hole. However, there is only slight damage on the surface of the war clothes, and the body under the protection of the war clothes is not damaged, which shows that the defense performance of the steel war clothes is very strong. In addition to the powerful gold titanium alloy armor, the most important part of the whole armor defense system is actually a special shock absorption and buffer system. This technology can be said to be the core technology of the steel battle suit. It is with it that the steel battle suit can have such a small volume that it can surpass the super defense of heavy tanks. This damping system, which can be regarded as black technology, is also Chen Mo's favorite. If it wasn't for Tony Stark, the power of Hydra alone might not have been studied for hundreds of years. Only Chen Mo, who was personally involved in the design and manufacturing process of Mark II, knew what was the most valuable part of the suit. The design of arc reactor energy, flight thruster, and driving system of the whole battle suit is high-tech, but it is not absolutely impossible to manufacture. In Iron Man II, Hammer Industry imitated the armor similar to the steel battle suit. Although it was not mature at that time, it had a big gap with Tony Stark's steel battle suit in many aspects. It was completed with the help of another talented scientist, Ivan Vank, and possessed the actual combat ability. But even so, they are just some remote-controlled steel machines, with average performance in speed, defense, flexibility, maneuverability, etc. What's more, without Tony Stark's core shock absorption system, if the driver is driving inside, he will be shocked to death by a strong attack or a huge impact when he falls. The whiplash machine armor made by Ivan Vank seems to be powerful, but in fact, it only relies on two flexible and powerful energy whips to make people unable to get close. Its own defense ability is not strong, mainly relying on the surface of steel armor for protection. The shock absorption and buffer system invented by Tony Stark can greatly weaken the impact force on the outer defense armor, and the impact transmitted to the body is very small. It can be said that as long as the outer alloy armor is not broken, the people inside will not be in danger of life. So Obadiah's attack didn't directly shock Tony Stark to death as he wanted, but the gold titanium alloy used in Mark II's outer defense armor, although it's a super special alloy used by the Blazing Angel military satellite, is not indestructible after all, and has slight deformation under the attack of heavy impact hammer. Obadiah was not angry to see that he could not kill Tony with a single blow. What a surprise! It looks like you've upgraded your defense system. Obadiah's strong defense of Mark II cannot help admiring. Tony, you're a real genius. Unfortunately, you must die today, Obadiah said. His face began to turn ferocious. Tony was allowed to make useless struggle under the fixation of Iron Overlord's thick mechanical arm. He raised his left arm's impact hammer again and launched a continuous attack on Mark II's head. Despite the counteraction of the armor and shock absorption system, Tony's brain was still buzzing with the continuous strong impact, and he could only instinctively carry out useless struggle. Head armor damage 15%, Jarvis's voice sounded in Tony's ear. In the shaking vision, there was also a picture of Mark II's all-god armor. The red alarm had been lit on his head, and the damage was indicated by a progress bar. As the Iron Overlord's heavy hammer bombarded Mark II's head one after another, the damage of armor became more and more serious. "Sir, head armor damage is increasing rapidly, which has reached 37%. Estimated damage time 24 seconds. Jarvis's warning worried Tony Stark, but he couldn't resist at this time. Just when he racked his brains to think about the way to crack, the damage degree of the head armor had reached 90%. Seeing that he would be completely damaged after several attacks, and then his head would be blasted together, Tony, still helpless, can only watch the damage continue to rise. A kind of desperation rises rapidly in his heart, which he has felt twice. One was lost in the vast hot sand sea in the desert of Afghanistan. The other was subdued by Obadiah with a nerve paralysis device and took the second-generation arc reactor from his chest. These two times, Chenmo appeared in time to rescue him from the edge of death. But this time, Chenmo should still be at the seaside villa. He can't make it. Even if he does come, he may not be the opponent of Obadiah's Iron Overlord. It seems that this time is really going to die. It's just Pepper. Just as Tony put down his last hope, some regret and unwilling to prepare for death, a brilliant silver sword light suddenly crossed his head. A bright silver sword light from the Iron Overlord's head across. Chapter 154. The arm that was waving at Tony Stark seemed to lose its power in a moment. Under the influence of inertia, it hit the helmet gently. The slight vibration was completely offset by the defense system of the warsuit, which did not bring any feeling to Tony. Obviously, under the light of that sword, the impact hammer has lost its power and can no longer play the strong impact force before. Originally firmly bound by his other steel arm is also powerless down. Tony rushed forward a few steps, and then quickly turned to look at the Iron Overlord behind him. I saw the Iron Overlord's huge body standing quietly in place. The original position of his head was cut off by chi, then the cut on the armor below was as smooth as a mirror. Some cut cables exposed in the cut were still sparking from time to time, and the whole armor had completely lost its combat effectiveness. Under Tony's gaze, the huge body of the Iron Overlord who was beheaded fell back slowly, and the heavy weight shook the ground. In the smoke and dust aroused by the fall of Iron Overlord, a tall and great black figure slowly walked out and came to Tony. In his right hand, he held a 1-meter-long silver double-handed knight's heavy sword, which apparently cut out the devastated silver sword light that Tony Stark saw just now. Although he had never seen black armor and silver two-handed knight's sword before, Tony Stark was very familiar with them. When he was a child, he heard his father Howard tell him about Chenmo's equipment and dress. He knew the origin and sex of every weapon. Designed by Chenmo himself, the tight and indestructible Aiden alloy armor battle suit, the legendary sword of King Arthur, the indestructible sword of the king, the only original Aiden alloy shield in the world, can eliminate all attacks in an invisible way. These legendary weapons and equipment, which he was familiar with, appeared in front of him. So although he didn't see the face of the man in front of him, Tony Stark could conclude that this was his godfather, Commander Chenmo. Once again, Tony Stark, who was saved by Chenmo in despair, quickly opened his battle suit mask and shouted excitedly at the tall figure in front of him. "Daddy!" It turns out that Chenmo had already arrived at Stark Industry and witnessed the whole process of the battle as early as before they flew to the sky. just for the purpose of training his son Tony Stark, Chen Mo didn't rush out. Only when he found Tony in danger did Chen Mo draw out the sword behind him. His speed broke out with all his strength and rushed towards them. When he was close to the back of the Iron Overlord, Chen Mo made a great leap from the ground, and the sword of the king, which was extremely sharp in his hand, came out directly, cutting off the whole head of the Iron Overlord, and then the Iron Overlord lost control and fell heavily on the ground. Chen Mo put the king's sword back in his back, strode to Tony and looked at him sternly. Before the death of the enemy is confirmed, the battle is not over. Under Chen Mo's stern gaze, Tony thought of his carelessness and felt ashamed. Facing Chen Mo's instruction, he nodded seriously. "I remember, Dad." This is the third time he was saved by Chen Mo in danger. Looking at Chen Mo's tall and magnificent figure, Tony can't help but feel a yearning. It's nice to have a father, a Chewie, in the S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secret underground base, not too far from Stark Industries. Howard Stark, who is doing experiments in the laboratory, suddenly sneezes uncontrollably. His hand holding the tool inevitably shakes with a shake. A crackling sound accompanied by a large number of electric sparks rings. The parts on the test bench in front of him are completely discarded. Falk, blamed. What's going on? I sneeze all the time recently. Is it Tony's little bunny thinking about me? Looking at the smoking experimental parts in front of him, Howard rubs his nose angrily. He knew that Tony had been kidnapped by terrorists, but because of Chen Mo's presence, he didn't worry about Tony's safety, so he trusted Chen Mo to solve it. He has not interfered too much in Stark's industry since his death. Howard regards these as the training of Tony. He doesn't want Tony to become a little boy under his care. To grow up, he must experience some setbacks. He followed Chen Mo to the battlefield at the beginning, and his son must be a real man. Before, he had some worries about Tony. After all, he was also an unreliable playboy. Fortunately, Chen Mo came back. With him around him, Howard believed that Tony would change a lot. Think about the people brought out by Chen Mo: Steve, Huang Quan, Han Qing, Luo Zhen, Wang Kun. None of them are cowards, and the top ones are heroes. Give Tony to Chen Mo and Howard will be relieved. In Stark Industrial Park, Chen Mo looks at his Tony Stark excitedly and admiringly and shakes his head helplessly. Tony sees Chen Mo shaking his head and looks at Chen Mo in some confusion. "What's the matter, Dad?" Chen Mo glanced at Tony and asked sternly. "What did I just say?" Although Tony didn't understand why Chen Mo was angry, he replied seriously. "Before the death of the enemy is confirmed, the battle is not over." Under Chen Mo's eyes, Tony finally responds and turns to the Iron Overlord, who falls to the ground. At this time, he remembered that although the Iron Overlord had just been beheaded by Chen Mo and lost control, he fell to the ground, but on the cut surface of the Iron Overlord, there was only a broken cable with sparks. No blood, no white brains, that is to say, Obadiah was not dead. Because he didn't know the design layout of Iron Overlord, and was saved in time by Chen Mo in the crisis just now, Tony Stark just instinctively thought that his head had been cut off, and the battle was over, completely ignoring these details. Only at this time did he realize that the huge Iron Overlord's internal layout was different from that of Mark II, which was not completely close to his body. Obadiah's position was even lower. In the Iron Overlord's body, cutting off his head only damaged the Iron Overlord's control system, and did not hurt Obadiah. Under Tony's gaze, there was a sound of mechanism exhaust on the Iron Overlord's body which fell on the ground, accompanied by several white airstreams from the chest armor. In a sound of mechanical operation, the Iron Overlord's chest armor was completely opened, and Obadiah with a ferocious face stood up from the inside. Looking at the Iron Overlord, whose head was cut off behind his eyes, Obadiah turned around and looked at Chen Mo viciously, saying with hatred, "Who are you?" Just now, after the Iron Overlord's head was cut off, The wily Obed-Ibn wanted to hide in the war armor and wait for the opportunity to sneak out and attack again when Tony didn't pay attention. Unexpectedly, he was discovered by the mysterious man who suddenly appeared, saying the same thing. Chenmo looked at Obadiah coldly and ignored his meaning. However, when his eyes swept over Obadiah, Chenmo's eyes suddenly gave a pause. Obadiah saw Chenmo ignored his questions, and his ferocious face was even more angry. But strangely, he did not have the panic and fear of losing the biggest dependence after the Iron Overlord was destroyed. He did not seem to be afraid of killing Chenmo, who killed the Iron Overlord, and Tony Stark, who was still wearing the Steel War clothes. Under Chenmo's strange eyes, Obadiah raised his left hand violently. He saw that his left hand, which was supposed to be cut off by Block Romlo, looked as good as before. But if you look carefully, you will find that the movement of this hand is very stiff. Obadiah raised his left hand, palms facing Chenmo and Tony Stark. Then, under the eyes of the two men, the hand broke a gap between the middle finger and the ring finger. The palms on both sides separated along the gap and opened to both sides. In the middle, a science fiction silver barrel was protruded. A smug smile appeared on Obadiah's face. A light blue light began to light from the root of the barrel and spread rapidly towards the muzzle. When the whole barrel was lit with blue light, it seemed that the energy had been saved. With a shrill howling sound, a light blue hazy light group came from the muzzle of the gun and flew towards Chen and Mo at an extremely fast speed. Chenmo was on guard when he found the abnormality of Obadiah's left hand. Seeing the change of this arm, Chenmo couldn't help flashing a strange look in his eyes. Looking at the hazy light group flying at a high speed, the shield behind Chenmo disappeared instantly, and then directly appeared in Chenmo's hand, before the light group. The hazy light of light blue contacted the shield, but it didn't smash Chenmo and the shield into pieces as Obadiah imagined. Instead, it was like a cloud of smoke hitting the wall. It only made a light circle of ripples, which directly dissipated in the air without making any sound. How could it be? How could the sonic gun be so easily blocked? Obadiah, who had been winning, saw that his attack was easily offset, eliminated in an invisible and unbelievable way. He has personally tested the power of this weapon on his left hand. Even an armored vehicle will disintegrate under one blow. How can it be easily blocked by a person with a shield? Suddenly, Obadiah seemed to think of something. He carefully looked at Chenmo, who had just put down his shield in front of him. Under this look, Obadiah's face couldn't help changing. Covered with black alloy armor, it is a round shield that can resist powerful attacks. It cuts off the Iron Overlord's head with one stroke, and the silver two-handed knight's long sword that cuts iron like mud. It connects all these things together. The name of a legendary character comes to his mind. Obadiah was more certain of his conjecture when he thought about the relationship between the legend and Howard Stark, but his eyes on Chenmo were full of disbelief. You were the commander of the Special Forces. Aren't you dead long ago? Chapter 155. Obadiah looked at Chenmo with unbelievable eyes. A person who has been missing for 70 years and should have died suddenly appears in front of him, which is hard for ordinary people to accept for a while. Chenmo was not too surprised that Obadiah had guessed his identity. Although he didn't make movies and play stage plays like Steve, and became a famous star in the United States, Chenmo's fame was no less than that of Steve, the captain of the United States. After all, the whole World War II situation can be said to be rewritten by him. Chenmo's great contribution to human beings all over the world is indelible. After his disappearance in the sea, countless people from all countries of the Alliance appreciated his great achievements, and all over the world praised his legendary deeds. Biographies, novels, comics, and even films have been adapted, so Chenmo's story is still well known by countless people even though it has been 70 years. His strength, his pride, his fearlessness, his sacrifice, and all kinds of things about him are deeply attractive to ordinary people. No matter men or women, young or old, they are all fascinated by him, adore him, or even adore him. If they knew he was alive, there would be a lot of crazy fans pouring in, and Tony Stark's mansion would be directly destroyed by them. Of course, Obadiah also knows Chen Mo, and as a partner of Howard Stark, Obadiah has a deeper understanding of Chen Mo from Howard's mouth. Because of this, his fear of Chen Mo is also deeper. Obadiah, who was full of confidence, finally showed his fear. Chen Mo doesn't care about this but looks at Obadiah's left hand, which is transformed into a high-tech weapon. Ulysses Crow. Chen Mo looks into Obadiah's eyes and says a name in his mouth. When Obadiah heard that his pupils were locked, he was shocked by Chen Mo's real identity and added some deep fear. How does he know? When Obadiah was cut off with his left hand by the crossbones of Brock Romlow in Afghanistan, and returned to New York with the prototype and design drawings of Mark-I, he intended to install a hammer similar to that on the Iron Overlord on his left hand. As a result, Ulysses Crow, an arms dealer who had been doing business with him before, didn't know where he got the news that he had lost his left hand, so he came to his door and sent him this powerful sonic gun. Of course, Obadiah also paid a lot of money for it, but he thought it was very valuable. At ordinary times, the acoustic gun is hidden under the simulation robot arm that can complete simple actions and can be used as a good prosthesis. When attacking, the palm of the hand splits, revealing the acoustic gun hidden in it. This acoustic gun can launch powerful acoustic waves and shock waves, which make the attacked objects vibrate and impact strongly, and then disintegrate directly. With this sound wave gun disguised as an artificial limb, Obadiah still has a strong attack ability even without Iron Overlord, which is a very good base card, very suitable for surprise attack on Yin people. After the Iron Overlord was destroyed, Obadiah was going to wait for Tony Stark to relax his vigilance and attack him with a sonic gun. Unexpectedly, Chen Mo found him. Then the attack of sonic gun was easily resisted by Chen Mo with his shield, and he even called out the name of Ulysses Crow, who sold him the artificial limb sonic gun, which made Obadiah completely lost his confidence. But Obadiah, who was already crazy, didn't give up. Even if Chen Mo is the legendary commander, he is powerful and can easily resist the powerful attack of sonic gun. Tony is not necessarily. At this point, either you or I are dead. There is no way back. Obadiah temporarily put down his fear of Chen Mo, and once again aimed the left acoustic gun at Tony Stark. This kind of acoustic weapon can not only send out strong shock wave, but also send out sound wave, which can make the machinery produce high-speed vibration, and then the structure collapse, which can be said to be the killer of all machinery. Although the Mark II has an amazing defense and a black technology shock absorption and buffer system, Chen Mo is not sure whether it can withstand the attack of the live wave gun. The reason why Chen Mo was able to easily block the previous attacks was that the original Edelman alloy absorbed energy, attack, and vibration, making all attacks invalid. The acoustic gun, which mainly relies on the acoustic vibration as the attack means, is completely restrained by the shield, and the attack it sends out is directly absorbed and offset. Its powerful destructiveness cannot be exerted at all, and it is not a threat to Chen Mo. However, the armor of Mark II has no such magical characteristics as the original Edelman alloy. So when Obadiah aimed the sonic gun at Tony Stark, Chen Mo quickly dodged in front of Tony, and a flying knife appeared in Chen Mo's hand. As he raised his hand, the flying knife turned into a streamer and flew towards Obadiah like lightning, just inserted in his left shoulder joint. With a sharp pain, Obadiah's left arm suddenly lost all its strength and fell powerlessly. It was already on, and the sonic gun barrel that was storing energy was also dimmed. I have to thank you for helping Tony with several lessons. Now you can die. Chen Mo said, but did not continue to do so, but turned to Tony Stark. Tony, kill him. The next day, Tony Stark admitted to being Iron Man at a press conference about last night's battle between two Iron Men near the Stark industry, just like in the movie. With Tony, I'm Iron Man. The voice dropped, and the scene of the conference burst into flames, while Agent Phil Coulson turned to Chen Mo helplessly, and the meaning in his eyes was obvious. Boss, your son didn't come as planned. Before Tony Stark came to power, Phil Coulson gave him a prepared speech, explaining the hero Iron Man who fought with evil robots and protected civilians last night as one of Tony's bodyguards. Unexpectedly, Tony directly admitted that he was Iron Man. Chen Mo is not angry because Tony doesn't play according to the routine. This is the real Iron Man, Tony Stark. Although Tony is as good as his own son in front of Chen Mo, he is actually a very arrogant, conceited, and narcissistic man. If he had not grown up listening to Chen Mo's legend, he was full of admiration in his heart and had been saved by Chen Mo several times in crisis. Tony could not have been so obedient in front of Chen Mo. And Tony Stark at this time is what he usually looks like. He disdains to cover up his identity and carefully hides himself with lies. I am myself, unrestrained and don't need to be low-key. After the press conference, Tony became a famous man. This time, it's not because of his genius, his gold, and his romance, but because he's a superhero, Iron Man. The specific details of the war that took place in Stark's industry on that day are not known to the outside world. The incident was taken over by the Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. The police were not qualified to ask about it, and Obadiah's death did not cause any trouble. In the end, Obadiah died in Tony Stark's hands. Now Tony Stark is not a playboy. He has experienced the experience of being kidnapped by terrorists in Afghanistan and the deception and betrayal of Obadiah, a close and trusted man. Tony Stark has matured. Before the destruction of the arms Obadiah sold to terrorist organizations and anti-government forces, he also killed many armed elements by himself. Tony didn't have much resistance to killing, just wanted to kill his once close partner, and he had lost his combat effectiveness. Tony still hesitated. Under Chen Mo's deep and sharp gaze, Tony Stark also understood that he was a woman at the moment, and could not help but start to reflect in his heart. Thinking of Obadiah's actions over the years and the great harm brought by the behind-the-scenes arms exchange, Chen Mo's hesitation gradually became firm. If he didn't kill Obadiah today, with his character and performance all the time, it would inevitably become a huge hidden danger. Obadiah's ambition is very big. At the beginning of Stark Industry, he always wanted to seize the control of Stark Industry, and almost succeeded. After getting the powerful steel war suit invented by Tony Stark, his ambition expanded further, and he wanted to control the whole world with the powerful new weapon of steel war suit. If we don't kill him today, once he escapes in the future with his great ambition and the madness of putting people's lives in vain, we will certainly bring greater damage to the world. In this case, let his evil deeds end here. Tony Stark, determined, ended up with Obadiah with a palm of his hand. Chen Mo nodded his head with satisfaction. He wanted to cultivate a superhero, a protector of world peace, rather than a pedantic law enforcer. The best way to deal with the huge hidden dangers that threaten the Earth's security is to eliminate the real evil people, rather than lock them up in prison and give them a chance to turn the tables. Kill Obadiah, clean up the cancer in the Stark Industry, and then it's time to completely solve the company's problems. At the end of the conference, Chen Mo asked Tony to convene all members of the board of directors of Stark Industries. At the instigation of Obadiah, the board of directors stopped Tony's work and took control of Stark Industries from him on the grounds that he had been abducted in Afghanistan and replaced with PTSD. Now that Obadiah is dead, the rights of the company need to be reshuffled. In a large conference room in the Stark Industrial Office Building, all the directors of the company arrived. Chapter 156. They sat in their chairs and talked with each other, complaining about Tony Stark's late arrival. After Howard's feigning death, Stark Industry was once in trouble. At the instigation of Obadiah, Tony Stark inherited 40% of Stark Industries shares from Howard and sold 10% of them to save the company in trouble. This is the current board of directors. In addition, when the company went public later, Tony Stark reduced his shareholding by 20% as a circulating share. Now Tony has only 10% of the shares of Stark Industry. After a series of share changes, the size of the board of directors has further expanded. Now there are 9 directors who hold more than 10% of the company's shares. So the actual control of Stark Industries is not in Tony Stark's hands, but in the hands of these board members here. This is also Obadiah's plan, through the board of directors overhead Tony, Master Stark Industry. For Tony Stark, a group of board members like Obadiah just use him as a tool to make money for them. Tony Stark keeps developing new weapons, and they sell these weapons to anyone who needs them, whether they are the National Army or terrorists, as long as they can bring wealth to them. They will not control what they have achieved in the hands of nobody. From this point of view, they are consistent with Obadiah's concept and pursuit. So when Tony intends to close the arms manufacturing department, they don't hesitate to stop Tony's work, help Obadiah seize power, and let him fully control the company. This is also the result of Obadiah's many years of planning and hard operation. Now, Obadiah, the spokesman of the board of directors, is dead. Tony Stark, as chairman of the board, brings them together to hold the board of directors. They don't know what the purpose of Tony's holding the board of directors is. Although he became the Iron Man in their eyes, he was still the playboy they played with and applauded. If they were, they would never disclose their identity. He was as arrogant and naive as before. If he knows the current affairs, they don't mind resuming his work, letting him continue to run the company and make money for them. After all, Tony Stark is really a genius in weapons research and development. As long as he is willing to continue to develop more advanced and powerful weapons for the company as before, they will continue to enjoy the endless wealth created by Stark Industry for them as before. And if Tony Stark is still stubborn, they don't mind to continue to restrict him and nurture an obedient spokesman. Anyway, the existing weapons technology of Stark Industry is enough for them to make huge profits. Without Tony Stark, they just make less. So when Tony Stark came in, there was no respect for the chairman in the eyes of a group of board members, but a high-level examination. But soon, their eyes turned to several people who came in with Tony Stark, especially when one of them was a tall, slender, cold-blooded, and dignified young Chinese man who sat down in the chair originally belonging to the chairman of the board, and the brows of several directors could not help wrinkling. Tony, who is this man? A man in his 50s, wearing a pair of gold glasses and a mean face, asked Tony Stark, who had just sat next to Chen Mo. Tony Stark ignored his questions directly and didn't even look at him. Dare to use this attitude to talk to me, I blame you. What's more, he doesn't know how to introduce Chen Mo and tell everyone that this is my godfather. You can call him father like me. Ah no, it's uncle, because he's nearly 100 years old and just came out from under the ice. If you can live here, thank him for his help. Tony Stark just called the board of directors according to Chen Mo's request, but Chen Mo's plan is not clear to him, but no matter what Chen Mo wants to do, he will fully support him. The director who asked just now found that no one paid attention to him, and his face turned red with anger. He gave Tony Stark a fierce look and turned his eyes to Chen Mo. When he was going to directly question Chen Mo suddenly looked at him. Chen Mo's eyes are cold and cold, which makes him feel cold all over the body. It seems that he can freeze the soul. The sharp air contained in them makes his heart pumping. The interrogative words just to be exported are directly held back to his stomach, and his arrogant head is unconsciously lowered to avoid Chen Mo's eyes. Chen Mo's eyes swept across the faces of all the people present. Those who looked at him in the opposite direction were all changed in a flash. These directors are just rich people who have mastered the power of the company. In the end, they are just ordinary people. How can they be compared with Chen Mo, who killed countless people and took charge of the imperial power? Under his sharp eyes, he retreated one after another. He did not dare to look at him. In his heart, he was afraid of the strange figure who suddenly appeared. Chen Mo raised his hand and waved to Phil Carlson, who was behind him. When he and Pepper came to hand out the documents they were holding, Chen Mo said slowly, "I am the boss of this company." Everyone in the room, including Tony Stark, was stunned when they heard what they had said, even when they saw the documents Phil Carlson and Pepper had put in front of them. With doubts, they opened the document in front of them and looked at it. With the reading of the documents, the faces of the people also become more and more wonderful. At the top of the document is a copy of the equity transfer contract. According to the contract, Howard sold 60% of Starker's shares to Chen Mo for $60 million 70 years ago. That is to say, the man named Chen Mo holds 60% of the company's shares in the contract and is the real boss of Starker Industry. In fact, everyone here knows that Stark Industries has a mysterious major shareholder who holds 60% of the company's shares, but he has never appeared or interfered in the operation of the company. Every year's huge dividend has been paid to Howard's private research account. After Howard's death, it has become Tony Stark. Therefore, Tony Stark's research funds are actually provided by the mysterious controlling shareholder. If Howard had not spent too much money on the research of anti-gravity technology before, he would have spent all the money in the account. Tony Stark would not have sold his shares to save the troubled company, inspired by Obadiah. Although Tony Stark only owns 10% of the shares of Stark Industry, he actually enjoys 70% of the company's dividend, and several directors of the board of directors, each of whom is only about 1%. But Tony Stark was obsessed with weapons and technology research and development, and spent most of the huge profits on experiments. The final results were put into production and sales by Stark Industry, which saved the company and other shareholders a lot of research funds. It's just that Tony Stark didn't care about this before. In his opinion, experiment and research are his hobbies. He enjoys the process, and Stark Industry is his own company, so it's not necessary to figure it out so clearly. So these board shareholders have always been taking advantage of Tony, and they feel at ease. Tony Stark didn't care about it before, because in any case, the last 70% of the profits came back to him, and the money was a number for him. Stark Industry was founded by his father Howard. Now it's in his hands. He hopes to see it grow and grow continuously. His research results will be used by his own company. What's more payment? Now, of course, Tony will not be as naive as he used to be after Obadiah and the board of directors calculated him. In fact, everyone, including Tony, didn't know about the mysterious major shareholder before. His information seems to be deliberately hidden. People only know about his existence, but no one knows exactly where he is sacred. Why do they have the controlling right but never participate in the management of the company, and also give huge dividends to the Stark family for free use? At this time, the contract solved the confusion in the hearts of the people. An additional clause in the contract stated that Chen Mo would give all the benefits to Howard for research. As for not participating in management, it's a private oral agreement between the two. Of course, speaking to the two, it's enough. If the formal documents are not needed for equity and income distribution, and the two don't even need to sign a contract, Does Howard dare to rely on Chen Mo's account? Obviously, he didn't have the guts. But if Chen Mo is in debt, Howard can only bear it. Who can't beat Chen Mo? They don't think the contract is fake as soon as they check it, but some people have found out the problem. This contract was signed 70 years ago. Don't tell us you are Chen Mo. Although initially intimidated by Chen Mo's momentum, it is related to the control of the company, and the huge benefits make them abandon their fear. Then Tony Stark, who had read the contract, spoke. My father's identity should be clear to you. During World War II, he joined a special department of the Allied forces. You must have heard of one of his former comrades in arms. That's commander of the Special Forces, Chen Mo. That's the one in front of you. Special Forces Commander. Chapter 157. This is a more familiar name than the Captain of the United States. Even 70 years later, people will often talk about him, his position in history, and his position in Hitler. Hitler provoked the war and almost conquered the world by force, while the commander almost wiped out the highest force with his own force, equipped with advanced weapons and powerful Hydra army, and then ended the World War II at one stroke and maintained world peace. Moreover, in order to prevent the crazy plan of killing the world and protect the world's major cities from being destroyed, the commander chose to sacrifice himself and drove the super bomber used by the Hydra to carry out the plan into the sea, saving hundreds of millions of civilians' sexual lives. His incomparably powerful power and great feat like a savior are admired and worshipped by countless people. However, what he left to the world is the image of being wrapped in a dark full-body armor combat suit, with sword and shield on his back, and holding 2 guns. Most people only know that he is the commander of the Special Forces, but they don't know much about his name. So, seeing Chen Mo's name on the contract, the directors of Stark Industries didn't think of the commander. It wasn't until Tony Stark identified Chen Mo that they knew that the mysterious controlling shareholder, who holds 60% of the shares of Stark Industry, was the legendary commander of Special Forces. But it's not surprising to think of Howard Stark's identity, his close relationship with the commander, and all the legends they know about the commander. It is said that the commander comes from a mysterious and ancient family in China. He is a billionaire and is very rich. However, Howard Stark is obsessed with the research and development of advanced technologies such as anti-gravity and spends money like water. No amount of money made by Stark Industry is enough for him. It's not surprising that Howard sold Stark Industries to Chen Mo, because he has more than enough money to spend on one and more money to spend on the other. It makes sense that Chen Mo has not been involved in the management of the company and has given all the profits to Howard for research. Just the commander fell into the sea with the plane 70 years ago. Even if he is still alive, he is over 90 years old now. How could this young man be the commander? A director looked at Chen Mo's young face and didn't believe Tony at all. Tony, don't think of us all as fools. Other directors have accused Tony Stark. When Commander saved the whole world, our parents and elders were able to survive because of him. If this person is really Commander, don't we all call him Uncle? I think Grandpa is right. Ha ha, Tony, you are so naive that you have come up with such a way to regain control of the company. Do you think we are idiots? We'll believe your obvious lies. Absurd. It's ridiculous. A group of directors didn't believe what Tony Stark said. Chen Mo, who looked younger than Tony sitting in front of them, was the commander. They only think that Tony found out the equity transfer contract and knew that the real identity of the mysterious shareholders of the company was the commander of the Special Forces. They wanted to take control of the company from them and take over the Stark Industry again. However, in their opinion, Tony's idea is so naive that they find a young man who looks extraordinary and wants them to believe that he is the commander who has been missing for 70 years. It's just fantastic. He would not think that they would really believe such a ridiculous lie. It's really bullshit. When Tony Stark saw that people didn't believe him, he looked at Chen Mo helplessly. Chen Mo didn't respond to the noise of the people below. He looked up at the time and said to Pepper, who was standing beside Tony, "Turn on the TV." Although Pepper didn't understand Chen Mo's intention, he turned around and picked up the remote control from the table beside him and turned on the TV hanging on the wall on one side of the conference room. There seems to be a live broadcast of the conference on TV, watching the Pentagon logo hanging on the background wall of the conference, which seems to be held by the military. Seeing that Chen Mo didn't speak, Pepper changed several stations casually, but found that all the scenes were the same. It seems that every TV station is broadcasting this news conference live. Pepper felt something unusual, and then he stopped to change channels. Everyone's eyes were all on the TV. They wanted to see what the fake was doing. Soon, the conference officially began, and a middle-aged officer in a straight uniform and a resolute face stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is a very important announcement for the Ministry of Defense to hold this press conference. 3 months ago, a polar research team found a giant plane in the ice shelf that had been frozen for 70 years. In this plane, we have a huge discovery. In the Second World War, the legendary hero who rescued the people of the world from the war and made great contributions to the end of the war, the commander of the Special Forces, Major General Chen Mo, was frozen in the plane and slept in the ice with him for 70 years. Not long ago, after unfreezing, the commander has successfully unfrozen from the frozen state, ending his 70-year-long dormancy and waking up. That is to say, our hero of all mankind, commander of special forces, Major General Chen Mo, is back. He will continue to devote himself to the great cause of protecting human security and maintaining world peace. From today on, the security of the people has a strong guarantee. As the officer's voice fell, the whole press conference was full of excitement and enthusiasm. The legendary hero, the creator of world peace, the god of human security, the savior and commander Chen Mo didn't die, but he was frozen in the glacier for 70 years. Today, 70 years later, he miraculously survived again. It's just incredible. A kind of uncontrollable excitement surged up from their hearts. The impact of this news on them was no less than that of knowing that the real God had come to the world. At the same time, a strong sense of security came along with it. A hero who died generously to protect civilians from bomb bombing can make people feel more stable than the God who is higher. Not to mention the excitement and fanaticism of the press conference, and the people all over the world after they heard the shocking news. At this time in the Stark Industrial Conference Room, the needle can be heard quietly. The 9 directors' eyes to Chen Mo became extremely complicated, with shock, fear, worry, hesitation, disbelief, and doubt. All kinds of complex emotions emerged in their eyes. Even if the commander really survived, how do we know that you are the commander? A director is still unwilling to believe it or to accept it. In other words, without a coffin, no tears. Chen Mo glances at the speaker lightly and is swept by Chen Mo's eyes. The director only feels Chen Mo's eyes are bright, which seems to contain a magic light. The sharp edge makes him feel cold all over. It seems that all the hairs on his body stand up, turn his head involuntarily, and avoid Chen Mo's eyes. At this time, there was another movement at the press conference on TV. The middle-aged officer reached out his hand and pressed down the crazy questions of many reporters below. When they finally calmed down for a while, he continued in their expectant eyes. In response to special events that may threaten the Earth's security, Commander Chen Mo will form a strategic response team composed of powerful superheroes. This team will be led by Commander Chen Mo himself, and its first member is the superhero, Iron Man and Tony Stark, who has just destroyed the giant robot attacking the civilians and has a strong steel battle suit. At this time, The members of the board of directors at the bottom have nothing to say. Obviously, the powerful and cold young man sitting in front of them is Chen Mo, the commander who has been sleeping for 70 years. Seeing that all the people below were quiet and obviously accepted his identity, Chen Mo said slowly, "No one seems to question my identity." All the members of the board of directors at the bottom bowed their heads and said nothing. Chen continued, "As the boss of Stark Industries, I have several decisions to announce to you. Chen Mo, who owns 60% of Stark Industries, has absolute control of the company. His decision does not need anyone's consent, so he just announces his decision. The following people also know this. With a complex, heavy heart, attentively listen. First, dissolve the board of directors." The faces of a group of directors changed in unison. They opened their mouths to say something but didn't know how to say it. Regardless of their reaction, Chen continued. Second, the company delisted and recovered all its shares. The faces of the directors changed again. In this way, Tony and Chen Mo will hold 90% of the shares of Stark Industries, and 10% of their shares will completely lose the ability to influence the company's affectation. They will be kicked out of the company's management completely, and will not enjoy any benefits except dividends. Moreover, with delisting, the company's valuation will definitely be affected. The value of their shares will be greatly reduced, and the loss will be very large. Before they could respond, Chen Mo went on. Third, take back all the shares held by the minority shareholders, together with 60% of my shares, and transfer them to Tony Stark to complete the privatization of the company. Chen Mo's last words were like a bolt from the blue, and Tony Stark and a group of directors all looked at Chen Mo incredulously. Chapter 158. The market value of Stark's industry is over 100 billion, and 60% of its shares are worth over 60 billion. Chen Mo even said that he would send them, plus their shares. "I will never sell my shares." One director snapped, saying that some of the other directors nodded their heads, while others reflected, obviously moving their minds. After Chen Mo's return, they have completely lost control of Stark Industries. With the support of Chen Mo, they can't bully and restrict Tony Stark as before. Under the control of Tony Stark, the company's prospects are not promising. Since they can't get back to the sky, they just sell their shares. 1% of the shares are worth more than 1 billion. Chen Mo's eyes swept over the faces of the crowd, and everyone's looks were all in sight, and their thoughts were clear to the heart. If you are not willing to hand over the shares, you can continue to turn down the documents in front of you. Hearing Chen Mo's words, all the directors, whether they want to sell shares or not, continue to open the documents in front of them curiously. Only under the share transfer contract, there is another information. With a careful look, everyone's face has completely changed and become ugly, even worse than when Chen Mo announced the dissolution of the board of directors and the completion of privatization after delisting. Only this information lists in detail every illegal thing they have ever committed, such as tax evasion, arms smuggling, behind-the-scenes trading, commercial crimes, hiring, raping, even killing. Everything is listed in detail above: time, place, specific process, without any omission, even more clearly than they remember. All directors looked at the documents in their hands, and the cold sweat on their foreheads could not help but flow down. Once a piece of information was handed over to the police, they would spend the rest of their lives in prison. Looking up at the other people around me, I found that they were all in fear and sweating as well. Obviously, the information in front of everyone is the same. Their most secret secrets are all known by Chen Mo. At this time, it is a naked threat to them: either hand over the shares or go to jail. There is no difficulty in this choice. It is easy to make the right choice between giving up equity and going to jail. All directors have signed their own names on the equity transfer agreement at the end of the document honestly. As for resistance, After determining the identity of Commander Chen Mo, no one feels that they can shake the commander who is powerful and high-ranking. They have no choice but to compromise. Tony Stark also opened the back of his document and found that it was also an equity transfer agreement. The difference is that, according to the above, after signing this agreement, he will get 100% shares of Stark Industry, which will become his own private enterprise. Tony Stark couldn't help looking up at Chen Mo. "Dad, I have already agreed with Howard that if he gave me a son, I would give him all the shares." There is no doubt about Chen Mo's tone. Finally signed Tony Stark's agreement, and Stark Industry became a private company of his own. He has the final say. After all, the directors signed the equity transfer agreement as if they had been robbed of their own son and left the meeting room in desperation. Chen said to Phil Coulson behind. "Coulson, give all their criminal evidence to the police." "Yes, Commander." Tony Stark and Pepper can't help looking back at each other with a happy smile on their faces. They thought Chen Murin would let them go. They were indignant. They didn't think Chen Murin didn't play according to common sense. However, this is the style of the Special Forces commander. Chen Mok let them go without promising them to hand over the shares. Looking at the equity transfer agreement signed by Chen Mo and his own name in front of him, Tony Stark felt speechless. From now on, Stark Industry will return to the control of Stark's family and become a private enterprise completely owned by him. There will be no board of directors to interfere with his decision, or even directly exclude him from the company's management, resulting in a total loss of control of the company. The future of Stark Industry will be led and shaped by him. It's a great feeling. Just as the ceded territory finally returned to the motherland and the lost child returned to his father's side, Tony Stark's excitement at this time cannot be described in words, and a sense of satisfaction, steadiness, and responsibility that never existed came to him. Tony Stark can't help but turn around and look at Chen Mo, the most precious and best gift he has ever received. "It's so nice to have a father." In the secret underground laboratory of the Shendan Bureau, Howard Stark sneezed a lot, and another precision part which took several days to make was damaged in his hands. "Falk, Falk, Falk. Damn it, this is the first time. After super soldier serum strengthening, how can I have a cold if I am stronger than the top athletes? Doesn't God want me to do this great experiment? Yes, it must be. My research has come to the point where God is afraid. I am so great. Ha, ha, ha." Not to mention that Howard was almost driven mad by sneezing and solved the problem of Stark's industrial rights. Chen Mo and Tony Stark went back to the basement of Tony's seaside mansion to continue the research and development of new steel battle clothes. Pepper did not come back with them because Tony Stark took full control of Stark Industry, and the first order was to appoint Pepper as the new CEO of Stark Industry to manage the whole company for him. After Obadiah's betrayal, Tony Stark can no longer easily trust outsiders. Of course, Pepper is an exception. In addition to Chen Mo, she can be said to be Tony Stark's most trusted person, and she is also the best person in charge of the company at present. Pepper has worked as Tony Stark's personal assistant for many years. He has rich experience in enterprise management and secretarial positions. He has no problem in terms of ability. He also knows the company very well. Tony is very relieved to give the Stark Industry to her. Although Tony has a deeper feeling for the company after he fully owned and controlled Stark Industry, it's hard for him to stay in the company every day and manage the company's affairs personally. First of all, he has no experience in the actual management of the company. For a long time, Tony's interest is in technology research and development and weapon manufacturing. Compared with sitting in the office to deal with literature, he prefers to stay in the lab to do his research. So, he gave the Stark Industry to Pepper, the most trusted Pepper, and he continued to develop his steel battle suit. What's his opinion on the development of the company? Just tell Pepper directly, and he became the shopkeeper. Although Pepper is not sure about the sudden management of such a huge company, she is still a little nervous to accept Tony's encouragement or flicker. She also hopes that she can help Tony and manage the company better for him. Back in the Villa lab, the two were once again involved in the improvement of iron and steel battle clothes, and Dr. Ethan still worked as an assistant to the two. After following Chen Mo and Tony Stark in the development of iron and steel battle clothes during this period, Dr. Ethan felt as if he had opened a door to a new world. Various advanced science and technology and new scientific theories emerged endlessly in front of him, making him feel as if he had come to the world of science fiction. Dr. Ethan, who was already a top scientist, is like a bumpkin stepping into the modern world from a backward primitive society in this laboratory. In addition to being shocked by a cross-era technology, he only has to study hard. But in this period of time, his harvest is really great. With their intentional help, many previously incomprehensible technologies and theories have been fully mastered, and they can also put forward their own opinions from time to time. No longer like at the beginning, they can only help deliver tools and lay hands on them, and they are not able to participate in research and development at all. Dr. Ethan's ability is actually very strong. Otherwise, he would not have operated on Tony, who was seriously injured by the bomb in a simple cave, and put an electromagnet on his chest to save Tony, who would have died. Only in the past, he was born in a remote area of Afghanistan and had limited access to technology and theory. With the help of Chen Mo and Tony, Dr. Ethan's ability has been greatly improved. Gradually, Dr. Ethan can also put forward some useful suggestions for the improvement of steel battle clothes and really participate in the research and development of steel battle clothes. But Chen Mo didn't stay in the lab for long. With the help of Dr. Ethan, Tony Stark continued to upgrade and optimize the steel battle clothes. Chen Mo left the villa alone and returned to the Chinese martial arts school in Brooklyn. Chen Mo didn't stay here either. When everyone thought he was still in the martial arts school, in fact, he had already evaded everyone's sight and left the martial arts school quietly. Through the secret channel of Hydra, he went back to Hydra headquarters quietly, hidden in the top secret base in the mountains of Norway. Eddie, get me all the information about Ulysses Crow and Vakanda. In the spacious office, sitting in the chair behind the desk, Chen Merduan said to Albert, who was pouring coffee for him. After Chen Mo finished, he took a sip of coffee cup and was very satisfied. The coffee made by Pepper was far from old Eddie's. Leaving Tony Stark and Dr. Ethan in the lab to improve their steel uniforms, Chen Mo secretly returned to the Norse headquarters alone. Chapter 159. The third generation of arc reactor has been successfully manufactured, which uses replaceable palladium metal plate to provide energy, with higher energy output efficiency and longer service life. And it's very convenient to replace when the energy is exhausted. Just prepare enough palladium metal plates. No longer like the second generation of arc reactor, new reactors need to be made after the energy is exhausted. At the same time, the electromagnet on Tony's chest has also been improved, which no longer needs cable connection and is more convenient to install. Tony Stark can replace and install himself, and no longer needs Pepper to reach into his chest to replace him. More convenient and efficient energy supply has been solved, but the rapid equipment deployment system of the war clothes has not been completed. The new fast equipment mode has a great transformation to the war clothes. Many modules need to be redesigned to increase the deformation function to meet the requirements of automatic assembly of the war clothes. At the same time, it also needs to ensure the strong connection and the overall defense of the war clothes. Although Chen Mo's ability of thinking, memory, analysis, and so on is far beyond ordinary people due to his highly developed brain, he is still far behind Tony Stark, the inventor of steel warsuit and the genius of weapon manufacturing, in terms of the specific improvement and design of warsuit. Iron and steel battle suit is a complex system. It involves a lot of things if you want to make a huge transformation and upgrade of it as a whole. Each system needs to make corresponding changes: the upgrading of the transmission system, the rearrangement of various modules of the body, the corresponding improvement of the shock absorption and buffer system, and the enhanced composite armor. All of these require a very systematic and in-depth understanding of all parts of the war clothes, and the ability to make overall changes to all systems and layouts as required. At present, the only one who can do this is Tony Stark, the creator of steel battle clothes. What Chenmo relies on is a lot of scientific data stored in his mind, provided by Hydra, and the foresight brought by knowing the plot well. As long as he put forward the shortcomings and improvement direction of the steel war suit, Tony Stark can easily solve these problems. Unlike any other weapon in the past, there is no reference for the iron and steel battle suit. Every new function of it will face many problems. Chenmo can point out the shortcomings and improvement direction and provide some high-end technologies, but the specific design, the overall technology transformation, and finally apply it to the war clothes all need Tony Stark, the inventor of the steel war clothes, to realize. After all, he is the only one who knows the steel war clothes best. It's like a house. Tony designed and built the main frame. Chenmo knows the final appearance of the house. He can put forward various deficiencies, give opinions and some modification plans. But if he really wants to modify the main frame, he has to ask Tony Stark, the original designer. Of course, when the whole house is finally built, Chenmo, who participated in the whole project, will know it well. There will be no problem in building it again or making some minor modifications. But the fast dress system is obviously not what Chenmo can accomplish. The design in it is too complex and delicate, and it is an area that Chenmo has never been in touch with. There is no such information in Hydra's technology, so it can only rely on Tony. Chenmo left the villa by himself after telling Tony Stark all about his idea of the rapid automatic assembly system. He can't help much with the latter things. Just leave it to Tony. He has other things to do. During the previous battle with Obadiah, Chenmo found that his left arm, which had been cut off by Block Romlo, was equipped with a bionic mechanical prosthesis that could be transformed into a sonic gun. And Chenmo, the robotic arm, saw it in a movie. In the same superhero movie, The Panther, produced by Marvel, Ulysses Crow, the arms dealer who once sneaked into Wakanda and stole a lot of gold, was equipped with such an artificial limb acoustic gun in his left arm. According to Chenmo's understanding of the plot, this artificial limb sonic gun was rebuilt with a sonic weapon he snatched from Wakanda. But at this time, he should not have lost his left hand. This sonic gun is just a weapon for him. The news that Obadiah lost his left hand clearly showed him a business opportunity. He sold the sonic gun to Obadiah at a high price after its transformation and made a lot of money. It's a pity that Obadiah, though he got this powerful sonic gun, still couldn't threaten Chenmo, and finally he didn't escape the fate of being killed. But Ulysses Crow and Wakanda were in the eyes of Chenmo. Norway, the northernmost part of the Scandinavian mountains, is tens of kilometers away from the West Fjord coast. Under a high and steep mountain covered with ice and snow all the year round, there is a huge underground base hidden. Here is the headquarters of Hydra, number 0 top secret base. In Chenmo's spacious office, Chenmo is sitting behind his desk, holding a tablet computer and quickly browsing all the information about Ulysses Crow and Wakanda from Albert. Ulysses Crow's situation is no different from what Chenmo knew. Many years ago, Ulysses Crow infiltrated the mysterious country of Wakanda, hidden in the jungle, and stole a lot of Zhenjin from it. Now, in addition to smuggling and selling arms, He spent most of his time searching for and stealing ancient gold vibrating weapons with the help of an elite mercenary named Eric Kermango, and selling precious gold at a high price. In fact, the mysterious kingdom of Wakanda has attracted the attention of Hydra for a long time, and has a lot of knowledge about them in the dark. It can be said that Hydra is the most familiar organization in the world. Even Ulysses Crow, who has been in Wakanda, knows much less about Wakanda than Hydra. In fact, with the exception of Ulysses Crow, few people in the world know about the existence of this country. Even if I know it, I just think it's an African country which is mainly hunting and farming, extremely poor and backward. Even the intelligence departments and Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureaus of all countries do not know that. Hidden under the poor and backward appearance, the technological strength of the Kingdom of Wakanda is far greater than any other country and organization on the earth, and it is the most advanced country in science and technology in the world. According to the information obtained by Hydra, tens of thousands of years ago, a huge meteorite fell on the Earth, which is where Wakanda is now. This meteorite is completely composed of Zhenjin, forming a deep buried Zhenjin vein. As early as when the last king of Wakanda was in power, they sold the small amount of gold mined out secretly. Most of the original Edelman shield used by Dr. McMullen to make Chenmo and the gold vibrating used to study Edelman later were obtained from them. Using the huge amount of money obtained from the sale of Zhenjin, the domestic elites will be sent to the developed countries to receive higher education and learn advanced scientific knowledge. When they finished, they went back to Wakanda and developed science and technology with their advanced knowledge and powerful Zhenjin. In the past decades, Wakanda's technology has developed rapidly and soon surpassed all the countries on the earth, especially in the processing of vibrating gold and stealth technology. They can process the hard gold into a soft and close-fitting Black Panther battle suit, which can maintain good flexibility and has strong defense at the same time. Using Zhenjin, they have developed many very advanced technologies, weapons, and equipment. After the development of satellite technology in other countries, for the sake of seclusion, Wakanda even hides the whole country. The developed modern cities with high-rise buildings are only a primitive jungle in the eyes of the outside world. Wakanda has always appeared on the international stage as a poor and backward third-world country. Wakanda is composed of 5 tribes, each of which performs its own duties. The border tribes are responsible for guarding the kingdom and preventing outsiders from entering Wakanda. The people of the border tribes usually pretend to be farmers and hunters and live on the border of Wakanda to deceive the outside world and conceal the rich and powerful real situation of Wakanda. Although they seem to be just a group of backward tribal people wrapped in blue cloaks, in fact, their equipment is very advanced. The cloak used by border tribe soldiers to wrap their bodies is actually a gold vibrating cloak with protection and invisibility functions. When the cloak is activated, it can form a very powerful energy shield, which can withstand the attack of bullets and bombs. According to the analysis of the Hydra Intelligence Department, the technological level of Wakanda is still higher than that of Hydra in some aspects. We should know that the technology of Hydra has been more than 20 years ahead of the current world, which shows the high technological level of Wakanda. However, if we really fight, Wakanda is definitely not the opponent of Hydra. Although they have developed many advanced technologies relying on Zhenjin, Hydra is not inferior to them, and in the beginning, it is much better than them. Many of their technologies are based on Zhenjin. Almost all powerful weapons and advanced equipment are made up of Zhenjin. The sound gun that can launch shock wave and carry out sound wave attack, the vibrating gold mantle that can stimulate energy shield, the Panther battle suit, and the aircraft all cannot do without vibrating gold. However, Wakanda has powerful Zenjin, and Hydra has a more powerful cosmic magic cube. The attack power of energy weapons is also higher than that of acoustic weapons, and all kinds of fighters and warships developed on the basis of cosmic magic cube, whether in quality, performance, combat effectiveness, or quantity, are higher than that of Wakanda. The fighting qualities of the Hydra are far beyond the Wakanda border tribes. They can't compare with each other in will, belief, discipline, and fighting qualities. Once awakened, the cold winter soldiers sleeping underground in the base can even crush Wakanda and destroy the country overnight. In the materials about Ulysses Crow and Wakanda, Chenmo saw a document specially marked. Chapter 160. Opening the document, a picture of a black man with fierce eyes appeared in Chenmo's eyes. Eric Kermango, the top mercenary, worked with Ulysses Crow to steal and seize Zenjin from all over the world. After graduating from MIT as a graduate student, he joined the SEAL Commando team and went to Afghanistan, where he killed like a video game, so he won the title of Killer. He was also a member of the Joint Special Operations Command of the United States. He was a powerful fighter, with top fighting skills and physical fitness. At the same time, he was an excellent tactician. Eric Kermango's identity is not limited to this. His real name is Nijadaka, and his father, Nishab, is the brother of the current king of Wakanda, T'Chaka. When he was young, Nijab was sent to the United States as a spy on an assassination mission. During his mission in the United States, he fell in love with a woman and gave birth to a son with her. Since then, he has settled down in the United States, living with his wife and children in the Black Ghetto. There, he saw that the black compatriots in the United States were oppressed and discriminated against. Most of them lived at the bottom of the society and lived hard. Radical Nijab wants to equip them with gold, vibrating weapons, lead them to overthrow all countries, and let Wakanda rule them and the world. Because he knew that his brother, King T'Chaka, would not support him, so he found Ulysses Crow, told him the secrets of Wakanda and Zenjin, helped him sneak into Wakanda and stole a lot of Zenjin. But he didn't know that James, the most trusted brother-in-law around him, was really called Zuli. In fact, he was also a spy of Wakanda, who was sent to him by King T'Chaka to observe the implementation of his mission. In the end, Nishab's plan was exposed. When T'Chaka personally came to take him back to Wakanda for trial by the Presbyterian Church, he wanted to shoot and kill Zuli, who betrayed him, but T'Chaka accidentally killed him. Later, instead of bringing his wife and children back to Wakanda, he abandoned them in the slums of the United States. From the notes left by his father, Nicolab, Eric Kermango learned about his life experience, his faith, and what he had done before. Nicolab recorded many things about Wakanda and the black leopard in his notes. Eric then deduced from the leopard claw wound on Nicolab's chest that the one who killed his father was the black leopard T'Chaka. Eric's heart is full of hatred and always wants to revenge for his father who killed him and left his orphaned and widowed mother in the slum. Through his unremitting efforts, Eric Kermango lost his father's child from a slum and became a soldier with high education, intelligence, and strength. He was mixed with Ulysses Crow, the biggest enemy of Wakanda. But what really surprised Chenmo was that Eric Kermango was a nine-headed snake spy. It turns out that Hydra has long found the existence of Wakanda and has carried out comprehensive monitoring and exploration on them, as well as the real identity of Nijab and the cooperation between him and Ulysses Crow. But before Hydra could take further action, T'Chaka suddenly arrived in the high-tech spaceship of Wakanda and killed Nicolab in order to save Zuli. So the Hydra simply absorbed the abandoned Eric Kermango into the Hydra, and he was raised from a young age, so that he finally became a warrior loyal to the Hydra. In the movie, Eric Kermango takes the throne from the hands of T'Challa, becomes the new king of Wakanda, takes heart-shaped herbs and gains powerful power. Seeing this, Chen Mo has some thoughts in his mind, and he is also worried about whether the heart-shaped herbal medicine will eliminate the effect of brainwashing, restore his original consciousness, and betray the Hydra. So Chen Mo called old Albert, and Albert's words dispelled Chen Mo's doubts. "No way." Albert shook his head and said positively, "Eric Kermungo was raised by Hydra when he was young. We had a subtle influence on his brainwashing, not simply brainwashing, changing his original consciousness, but completely cultivating and shaping his thoughts by us." At this point, Albert looks at Chen Mo. Loyalty to Hydra has been deep into his soul, and no matter how strong he becomes, that will not change. Hearing Albert's explanation, Chen Mo was completely relieved. When Chen Mo was relieved, Albert explained to him the brainwashing method that Hydra now has. Because it takes a lot of time and energy to brainwash or cultivate Eric Kermungo from childhood. Only those who are selected from childhood and have good talent and trained as core members of Hydra can be qualified to accept. At first, they will be sent to all parts of the world as spies and intelligence personnel to perform tasks. After they have accumulated certain achievements, completed complex and rigorous investigation, proved their ability and absolute loyalty to Hydra, they will be allowed to enter the top secret base and officially become the internal core members of Hydra. Here, they will be strengthened with super soldier serum, and then they will stay in the top secret base or return to the outside according to the specific situation, and continue to perform more confidential and important tasks. At the right time, they will be recalled to the base, frozen, and become a winter fighter. Eric Kermungo is now in the period of investigation, but his investigation has been basically completed, and his performance is perfect in all aspects. He has strong loyalty, strength, wisdom, and ability to deal with events. As soon as possible, he will be able to enter the top secret base and receive enhanced qualification. In addition, Brock Longlow is also in this stage, and his performance is also excellent. Only one of them joined the Bureau of Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support and became a special team leader. He was a police officer. The other was a mercenary who killed countless people and helped him steal and snatch Zhenjin weapons together with a weapon dealer. There are many people under Hydra like them. They are hiding in governments, organizations, and even gangs around the world in various identities, providing a large number of important information for Hydra, but also shouldering different tasks. Now they are only recruits of Hydra. In the future, they will become the backbone of Hydra. In addition to the infallible brainwashing methods such as Eric Kermungo and Brock Romlow, Hydra actually has some simple and rough brainwashing methods. Through special equipment and hypnosis means, the target can be brainwashed in a short time, but the disadvantages of this way are also obvious. After brainwashing, their mind will be affected, unable to complete complex tasks, so they can only be used as soldiers. This reminds Chen Mo of the Winter Soldier in the movie. After he was brainwashed, he was a little confused. He only knew to perform tasks according to orders. He had no self at all. His previous memories and emotions were erased. It's just that this way of brainwashing is not safe. Just like Winter Soldiers, when they are stimulated strongly enough, they are likely to return to their original memories and minds, get out of control, and have to be brainwashed regularly to maintain their state. Of course, Hydra is also studying a more efficient and stable way of brainwashing, which can brainwash the target in a short time, and the effect can be maintained stably. The further goal is to retain the memory and thinking of the brainwashing object, and to complete more complex tasks, rather than just become a killing machine. Eric Kermungo's loyalty has no problem. Chen Mo's idea can be implemented. Later that day, Eric Kermungo and Ulysses Crow just managed to snatch an ancient weapon made of vibrating gold from a small museum. Eric Kermango was driving away from the scene when his cell phone in his pocket suddenly rang. Eric pulled out his cell phone while driving. The phone number on the screen made his eyes shrink. Yu Guang glances at Ulysses Crow beside him. At this time, he is immersed in the joy of another piece of precious Zhenjin. He doesn't pay much attention to Eric's cell phone. Eric Kermungo took the call, pretending to be nothing. A low, cold, non-emotional voice came into Eric's ear from the earpiece, but Ulysses Crow nearby could not hear a sound. Target, Ulysses Crow, mission kill. When the voice in the mobile phone finished speaking, he directly hung up the phone. Eric Kermango continued driving while putting the mobile phone back in his pocket. It seemed that nothing happened, but his eyes looking at the road ahead were cold, and a trace of murderous intent flashed away. But Ulysses Crow, who was sitting beside him, did not find anything unusual. He was still full of joy and played with the gold vibrating weapon he just got, and calculated how much he could sell this time. Eric Kermungo drove so fast that he arrived at their temporary stop and stopped in front of a remote warehouse. "We're going to get rich. Let's celebrate." Ulysses Crow turned his head and cracked his mouth at Eric and said with a smile. Then he directly opened the door and got out of the car and walked to the warehouse with the gold vibrating weapon. Eric Kermungo got out of the car behind him, but he didn't go to the warehouse with him. Instead, he slowly pulled out the pistol in his waist holster and pointed it at Ulysses Crow's back. Bang!